And then this is the kind of noob trap setup killer. If we try to come this way, the boulder comes. Mic check. Oh, looks like we're good now. Okay, can you guys hear me now? I see it going in OBS, so I assume so. Okay, thank you. Yeah, well, that was a lot of my intro that I just spent muted, so thanks for bearing with me with my technical difficulties, and thanks for saying something, because I was completely lost in the sauce there. So anyway, yeah, welcome on in, everybody. Nice to see you again. Asterix, Methoda, Mercy, Clownscum, Beans and Rice, welcome on in. What are you doing, puppy? Right, so yesterday we watched a couple videos about Elden Ring, focusing on its fairies, the cut umbilical cord, the worm faces, and the Crucible-style gigantic head statues. So today I thought we would do something in a bit of a change of pace and look at some more Dark Souls lore with some videos by Eredin, which I don't believe I've watched anything from his channel yet, but with the two videos selected being on The Witch of Izalith and Pyromancy, I thought it could be a kind of nice, contained topic for the stream today, because it's been a minute since we've looked at Dark Souls stuff, especially after like our Bloodborne binge the past couple days and stuff. So hope you guys are all doing well and ready to dive on into some lore. So first we'll start off with Dark Souls lore, The Witch of Izalith by Eredin. And apparently her ambition was the parasite.
Dead. If you are passionate about the lore within these games,
Let me turn the volume
please
up.
consider checking out my channel. Please remember to like, and if you are new, subscribe. With all
How's that
out
sound
of the
for
way,
you guys?
let us begin.
Pyromancy is the art of invoking and manipulating fire.
Oh, that voice is a lot louder. Okay.
Always fear the flame, lest you be devoured by it and lose yourself. I would hate to see that happen again.
The city of Izalith was not built, it was carved. From the rock the structures took form. The beings responsible for the city's construction were not demons, but people. On the many walls we
I know that Izalith is based off of like the Javan temples, and I thought those were like built and not actually carved out of rock. Maybe they could still be carved out of the rock in Dark Souls, but yeah, now I'm kind of curious. Jeez. Temples. Yeah, I'm going to look it up off the side here.
can see these people, a people before the demons, a people before the chaos. The chosen undead must ring 2 bells to fulfill the prophecy. The second bell is located within an area known as Quelaag's Domain. Between the spiders and their eggs, we see the ruins of a once important structure. This structure I believe to have been a church. So what was it that the people of Izalith once worshipped? The answer is flame, and more precisely, the first flame. However, this belief did not last long, and quickly began to change. In Izalith there is evidence of the city being incomplete, as if interest took a turn onto something new. Many archways were carved, but leaned to the bare rock. So what caused its people to shift focus? Catalysts of the Witch of Izalith, of long ago, when her daughters were still flame witches, before they were engulfed by the chaos flame. Before the birth of pyromancy, their wands were mediums for sorcery, but knowledge of this flame sorcery has long since vanished. The Izalith catalyst represents a refined understanding of flame. This was the first instrument that enabled one to cast flame sorceries. During the war with the ancient dragons, we see the flame witches conjure huge firestorms, burning down the stone arch trees. The instruments they use are Izalith catalysts, and these same staffs can also be seen elsewhere. In the bowels of the earth, a ritual is taking place. Between her burnt palms, the Witch of Izalith holds a flame.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite like details of all of Dark Souls 1's world building, is just even in the kind of a opening cutscene, something as small as the Witch of Izalith having burned hands, I think just kind of symbolizes her obsession with like literally grasping fire. So it just, S tier to me. And ulcerated welcome in. Methoda said, somewhat unrelated, but the flame sorceries, does anyone else think that that's what Aldia uses in his boss fight? I'd be a little bit skeptical because I don't know if flame sorcery can still even really be used after the undead curse came into being. Obviously the very last demon fire sage uses flame sorceries apparently, but for whatever reason, when we talked to Quaylana, she says that she uses pyromancy, which was just very strange to me because she should have been a flame sorceress or something along those lines. So maybe it was just an error on the developer's part, but I don't know. Good question though.
Beside her are her two daughters, with the large wooden staffs. What we are witnessing is the attempt to duplicate the
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let me look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I thought I put 7 on that quiz, so I felt like I should have been right, because 8 seemed wrong. Ooh. Anyway, sorry to think about something completely irrelevant.
The burnt palms, the Witch of Izalith holds a flame. Beside her are her two daughters, with the large wooden staffs. What we are witnessing is the attempt to duplicate the first flame, and this attempt did not occur before the war with the dragons.
Oh yeah, there's totally 7 there, I just miscounted
Soul
apparently.
of the bed of chaos, and the mother of all demons. This Lord Soul was found at the dawn of the Age of Fire. The Witch of Izalith attempted to duplicate the first flame from a soul, but instead created a distorted being of chaos and fire. Its power formed a bed of life, which would become the source for all demons, and is more than enough to satiate the Lord Vessel. Upon the many pillars the ruler was carved. Roots symbolised the witch, her transformation, and the beginning of a new culture. But what tempted the witch to duplicate that which gave her life? She and her daughters have proven that they have a profound understanding of flame. She learnt to shape the creator, but what if she could become it? Art of the Flame of Chaos, which engulfed the Witch of Izalith and her daughters. Erect localised chaos fire pillars which change strength depending on humanity. The Witch of Izalith, in an ambitious attempt to copy the first flame, created instead the Flame of Chaos, a twisted bed of life. The witch did not use her own soul, just a soul, to duplicate the flame. If she were to create something new, it would have to be pure and undeveloped, so that she could nurture and manipulate, shaping it into what she desires. It is my belief that she was pregnant at the time of the ritual. The flame she holds between her hands is that of her unborn child.
So that's obviously a bit of a bold claim here. I'm initially opposed to it, but let's hear what he has to say about that, because I don't know how common of a theory that is. Not that it needs to be a common theory to have merit, but I don't really think I've heard this one before.
A child works much the same as a parasite. It feeds and relies on the host for survival. The dependency of her child meant that the newly created flame was also dependent of her. The witch succeeded in creating life, but at the cost of another. An orange ring enchanted by a witch reduces lava damage. Since his sores were inflamed by lava from birth, his witch sisters gave him this special ring, but fool that he is, he readily drops it, and from that spot, a terrible centipede demon was born.
Okay, I can kind of see where he's coming from if he's going to say, the centipede demon was in Izalith, and then her being, transformed into the seedbed could explain this. But I suppose that also should call into question, the nature of the other demons and whether or not we can consider Izalith their mother as well. And just for anybody who, may not know, the Witch of Izalith's name is actually Izalith, which is a little bit surprising, maybe. They didn't seem to think of something more original, perhaps. I don't know.
He drops it, and from that spot, a terrible centipede demon was born. This ring once belonged to Ceaseless. The fact that this ring was made to be worn suggests that he may have looked more human upon birth, and that over time his condition worsened. Unable to control his sores, they slowly transformed him into the being we know him as.
Oh yeah, and that reminds me, Ceaseless Discharge's name in Japanese is something more along the lines of, the inflamed demon, or like inflamed in terms of like the medical sore type sense. Maybe. I actually don't remember what his name is. I should probably look it up, but yeah. Ceaseless discharge sounds a little bit more, shall we say, questionable in English.
In the Design Works interview, Miyazaki had this to say on Ceaseless Discharge. All demons are born from the fire of chaos, but he was the first, born so long ago when the fire wasn't yet stable. He possesses it, but he can't control it, and it burns him constantly. Despite his size, he's actually the youngest of Izalith's children. He stands gazing up at the ruins where his sisters live. The only source of comfort in his pitiful, painful existence is the belief that they are watching over him. After Ceaseless, demons continue to be born, but not in the traditional sense. The Guardian Soul gives us a clearer understanding of what makes a demon. Soul of the white-winged lying sanctuary watchkeeper, who dreaded the spread of the abyss. The Guardian exhibited traits of several animals other than lions, suggesting that it was no ordinary beast, but closer to the beings known as demons. In the beginning, the witch was yet to master the art of life. The signs of imperfections are evident when taking a closer look at her demons. The demon fire sage, the asylum demon, and the stray demon all suffer from the same problem. Their wings are too small and they cannot maintain flight for more than a few seconds. I believe that this is not their intended form. This is not how their mother envisioned them, that these demons are incomplete and imperfect. Further imperfections can also be seen when observing the backs of the tourist demons, a reminder of what could have been, but never were. Eventually, fully developed...
Is that real concept art? Because I haven't seen that. Oh, no, DeviantArt. Okay. Definitely not concept art. Yeah, because I also had noticed the kind of stump-like appendages in its back that could be potentially analogous to wings. So yeah, I'm having some random thoughts about, like, if demons were having imperfect forms, what would their quote-unquote, like, perfect forms be? And I do wonder if they were originally going to be something along the lines of dragons, and whether or not fire has, like, corrupted them to these forms. But, yeah, that's just kind of, like, really out there, so. Tourist demons.
Of what could have been, but never were. Eventually, fully developed wings were achieved. However, we shall discuss the Batwing demons and their betrayal later. Continuing, the bounding demons are yet another example of trial and error. Their appearance is of the decaying lower half of a dragon. When attacked, they retaliate.
Well, I guess that kind of makes sense for me to think that maybe the demons could have been dragons if these things are demons too. I actually don't know if they are. Is there a way to test if something is a demon in Dark Souls 1? Is it just, like, more susceptible to bleed?
Although incomplete, they are sentient. When we think of a dragon, we think of its ability to fly. Could this be the reason for their existence? Were they another stepping stone towards the perfect demon? The perfect creation? Even though these demons may have been imperfect, they were still loved by their mother. The culture they helped create was rich and rivaled those above. Old ring from an old witch, engraved minutely with indecipherable script, but seemingly useless. Not only does this ring display fine craftsmanship capable at the hands of demons, but it also reveals that they possess their own spoken and written language. When equipped, the ring allows one to communicate with the fair lady. A flaming wreath language can also be seen when you encounter her sister Quelaag, her brother Ceaseless, and her two other sisters that remain by her mother's side. The demon fire sage displays order and religion. Flame sorceries were taught to the demons, and their flame priest was the last master of these original fire arts. Demon Catalyst formed from Izalith molten rock.
And yeah, just as a bit of like a translation note, the fire art here comes from flame sorcery in Japanese, which is the precursor to pyromancy, which is more along the lines of like curse technique, or like the jujutsu in Jujutsu Kaisen, for example. So Beans and Rice said that Black Knight weapons deal bonus damage to demons. So Asylum Stray, Fire Sage Demon, Centipede, Taurus, and Capra. Yeah, okay, but do the Dragon Butts take extra damage? Maybe that'll be worth testing out. I mean, Fextra might already have like listed on their wiki or something, but I'm actually curious if they're really classified as demons or not.
Rock can be used as a fire weapon. The Demon Fire Sage was the first demon and the last master of the original fire arts, before the Witch of Izalith was engulfed by chaos.
Actually, this makes me reconsider Ceaseless Discharge. Is he technically not counted as a demon? Maybe that's even more evidence to say that Izalith must have been pregnant if she was, like, inflamed by lava and stuff. Because if the Demon Fire Sage is the first demon, yeah. I need to think about that a bit more. Okay.
Creating Pyromancy. Further signs of order and rank can be seen in the descriptions of the demon weapons. And with rank comes discipline. Around the waist of the Capra demons is a skirt. This skirt is made of bark, presumably peeled from the many roots that sprouted when the witch took a new form. The demons not only have respect for themselves, but also respect for others. Continuing with the Capra demons' design, Miyazaki had this to say on their appearance. It can be difficult to achieve the right balance of symbolism in designs. It's true that I dislike designs which are too obvious, but there are times when I feel a design lacks a certain something. At times like this, I have been known to look through the reference materials, pick out things I like, and simply stick them on. The Capra demon's head is an example of this. It gives a sense of ceremony and long-held tradition, which in turn hints at a developed culture. To further discuss evidence of a developed culture, let's return to the demon weapons. The lesser Capra demons use these great swords in pairs. The blade is cast iron and hooked. The sword is imbued with no particular magic, but for those who have the strength, its great weight will smash foes mercilessly. The mention of the weapons being comprised out of traditional resources ties in with the large flame ember and the chaos flame ember. The large flame ember creates fire weapons, and the chaos flame ember creates chaos weapons. If you wish to fully upgrade a weapon that is infused with either fire or chaos, you will need a red titanite slab. The red titanite slab is located within a chest deep below Izalith. These slabs are heirlooms of the nameless blacksmith deity. The red slab is evidence of his involvement with Izalith, as this slab did not exist before the ember's creation. So just how deeply involved was the nameless deity with the demons? To answer that, let's first discuss titanite. Titanite chunk for weapon reinforcement, not found outside of Lordran. With the discovery of chunks in Lordran, the race to locate the legendary slabs has begun, but could they be mere myth? In a recent video titled "Titanite is the Story of Creation," I proposed the idea that titanite is the flesh of the ancient dragons.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about pausing it and asking that question, because I think you could also make the argument that titanite is made out of like souls, and I think it kind of got retconned a little bit by the time of Dark Souls 3, where it talks about how crystal lizards eat souls and they produce it, I think. I don't remember exactly. Actually, let me look it up. Oops, misspelled. Should probably like type in crystal lizard, huh? Not crustal. In rare cases, I should probably pull this up for you guys. In rare cases, crystal lizards devour souls, growing to monstrous proportion and leaving these great scales. Oh, so that's titanite's scale. So maybe their scales get infused to become titanite with souls? It's kind of weird, because technically a scale is different than a chunk or a slab. So to be fair, I suppose you could make the argument that like all of the shards could have come from the slabs originally, and then over time there became more titanite in the form of the scales. Although these have the weird ass runes on them too. Oh, so it was Titanite, yeah, and then it was modified by souls. So never mind. So it's just like extra Titanite, I guess. All right, I'll need to think about it more. All right, and then in chat, Asknex did say that it doesn't say whether or not the ceaseless discharge or the bounding demons take more damage from like demonic hurting things. So thanks for that info.
The reason as to why Titanite cannot be found outside of Lordran is because Lordran is where the war with the ancients took place. The nameless blacksmith deity not only
and then I think like Dark Souls 2 retcons that by saying like it was mined underground or something. It's the lore is a little bit all over the place, isn't it?
acquired the knowledge on how the flesh of the ancients can forge legendary weapons, but he also learned how stone can become a vessel for life. For more on this topic, please watch the mentioned video. Returning to the demons, we see evidence of stone being a part of their creation. The stone demons can be encountered in both the demon ruins and Lost Izalith. They take the appearance of a statue and in some places serve as one. Another demon posing as a would-be statue is the centipede demon. Only when nearing the entrance to Izalith does it awaken. The centipede demon is comprised out of both rockworms and a bounding demon. As we've discussed, the appearance of the bounding demons is that of the decaying lower half of a dragon. Dragons were made of stone, that was later known as titanite. Demons too are made of stone. The bounding demon's existence cements the blacksmith deity's involvement with Izalith and the creation of demons, as I believe that the wings of demons to be a result of using the flesh of the ancient dragons in their creation. Now that we've discussed culture and creation,
So Nothingness, welcome back to the stream. You said that you always assumed Titanite was mineralized Dark Soul, hence why so many hollows drop Titanite shards and the Ring Knights drop stronger Titanites. So this is going to be an extremely controversial statement, but my opinion on hollowing is that it's not exactly a product of darkness, but I do think it's a product of souls or like the first flame, because I mean souls and the flames are kind of intertwined. And one idea I've been kind of convincing myself more and more of recently is that the whole kind of petrification is a byproduct of being kind of like burnt out by the flames and stuff to an extent. And so hollowing is kind of representative of that to a degree. And it can be reversed by, you know, taking in extra humanity amongst other things. But it in of itself is a curse because it's a form of life that like burns away other life, and it can be redirected through purging stones in Dark Souls 3, which is really weird. But anyway, what was I going to say about that? Oh yeah, with the demons, I'm wondering whether or not the way that demons are burned by flame and kind of become more stone and wooden is analogous to the way that hollows are kind of similar to demons, because hollows are also being kind of burned away by flame, in my opinion, because of like the dark sign. But again, I understand how contentious that is, so if you guys have questions, maybe I'll get into it a bit more, or maybe not, just to stay on track a little bit more.
let us delve deeper into...
Oh yeah, so, and then why does that like tie back into your point about like the mineralized titanite? So if the ancient dragon scales are made out of souls, I think that just kind of like plays into things with like titanite. And if hollows drop more titanite, I would argue it would make sense that that titanite or whatnot could be because of like their hollowification being like petrification being related to souls perhaps.
Now that we've discussed culture and creation, let us delve deeper into chaos. It is my belief that the witch slowly lost control over the being she had created. At first she was able to maintain it, but by learning more of its secrets, she had to give something to get something, and the something that was required was her soul. The many roots around Izalith represent this violent consumption. Chaos is not only devouring its creator, but also their home. If one wishes to obtain the witch's soul, they must first destroy her two daughters. These daughters have stayed beside their mother since the ritual long ago. Through great efforts they help subdue the chaotic entity, and when killed, the spell is broken and control is lost. Chaos breaks free of its bonds and the host becomes the puppet. The transference of power is represented by the chaos bug below, as one can only obtain the primeval soul by killing this parasite. On the topic of parasites, they were yet another step towards progress and the evolution of demon culture. The more powerful parasites were reserved for the daughters. The fair lady and her sister Quelaag bonded with these creatures by choice. Their older sister, however, did not partake in this practice, but this does not mean she shunned the gifts of chaos.
So Methoda asks, do the Titanite demons take extra damage from the demon slaying weapons? That would really cement an association between them and Izalith. I don't think so, but I actually don't know. I think demon in the Titanite demon might be different from like the demon used elsewhere. I could be wrong about that. It might be a case of like Mamono versus Daemon. Let me Titanite demon. Okay, no, they do call them like demons. So maybe they are demons, but maybe not Izalithian type demons. I don't know. That's a good question though. And then what about the Demon Prince? Could you elaborate on your question about like does he take more damage from like Black Knight stuff? I would assume so. All right, going back to the video.
Art of the Flame of Chaos, which engulfed the Witch of Izalith and her daughters. Sweep foes with Chaos Fire Whip, which changes strength depending on humanity. The Fire Whip was wielded by the eldest daughter of Chaos. The Daughters of Chaos. We know of their mother, but what of their father? To answer that, let's return to Ceaseless. As we discussed, Miyazaki describes Ceaseless to be the youngest of Izalith's children. He was born after the witch's transformation, and her transformation ties in with the fate of the father. Inside of the painted world, an audience with a king can be granted. His name is Jeremiah, and he is the Xanthus King. He holds a notched whip and has chaos pyromancies at his disposal, those being Great Chaos Fireball, Chaos Storm, and Chaos Fire Whip, the same fire whip that is also wielded by the oldest daughter of Chaos. We found the father, but why then is he imprisoned within the painting? I believe this to be a result of...
I don't know if it's fair to say that he's the father, because shouldn't technically Solomon predate Jeremiah? Not that I think like it really matters, because Jeremiah could potentially predate Solomon, so he's just trying to say that Jeremiah was with Izalith, which is a very common theory. It makes a lot of sense, I think, with more of the cut content taken into consideration, but it's been such a long time that I actually don't remember the specifics, so my apologies for you guys in the chat. So, Astanex did say that according to a Fextra post, the Titanite demons do take extra damage from the Black Knight weapons, and they're officially weak to lightning. That is interesting. Okay, I guess they may actually be demons then. So, Mercy was asking whether or not the demons are actually made of stone, and that she could be wrong, but they don't seem to be made of stone to her. So yeah, I don't necessarily know if they're like actually made of stone, but when you do go to the high wall of Lothric through like Farron Swamp and whatnot, and you fight the stray demon atop the wall of Lothric and get its pyromancy, or is it technically a pyromancy? Like the boulder crash thing, it mentions that flame like went out long ago and it's made of stone now. Let me look that up real quick. Stone. Boulder? Boulder Heave. Oh no, it's the soul that talks about it. I forgot he actually has a soul. Yeah, I know it's like a pyromancy, it's just kind of really weird to think of a rock as a pyromancer. Old Demon King. Soul of a Demon? Nope, not this one. Stray Demon. Yeah, he says it lacks a trace of flame, But I guess it doesn't say that it's stone itself, or maybe it's like a weapon or something. I don't remember. I thought I saw it somewhere, but at the very least, he looks like a block of stone. Would it be Demon's Great Axe? No. Yeah, I guess I just don't know. That's why you're curious about the prince, as though like whether or not the prince is made out of stone. I feel like after you defeat him, or if you like compare it to the king, he would probably turn to stone after long enough. Like once his flame faded, if that makes sense.
A pact that was made to conclude a war. And before we talk peace, let's first discuss that war. Shield of the Black Knights that wander Lordran. A flowing canal is chiselled deeply into its face. Long ago the Black Knights faced the Chaos Demons and were charred black, but their shields became highly resistant to fire. The creation of demons and their advanced culture posed a threat to Gwyn and his kingdom. By creating a new flame, the Witch of Izalith had broken free of the cycle that ensnared Gwyn. The first flame had begun to fade, and the demons were now beginning to rival the heavens. During the intro, we are introduced to the first flame in all its wonder. The size of the flame represents the power it holds. However, as events unfold, the flame begins to change. When we are introduced to the furtive pygmy, the flame that is held between their hands is small and frail. The first flame seen behind them has also decreased. As the pygmy stands, their shadow rises. As the flame wanes, darkness grows. The fire began to fade once.
Do the other Lord Souls, or like the other Lords of Fire, not actually have shadows? I'm pretty sure there's like a ton of shadows with the Izalith thing. I just never really paid attention to the shadow for the furtive pygmy. Maybe there's something to that. I'll try to pay more attention to that in the future.
1,000 years ago. 1,000 years is also a common misconception when discussing the linking of the fire. Many believe this was when Gwyn departed to the kiln. However, I believe this to be incorrect. Lord Gwyn set out for the kiln before the events of the DLC, and these events occurred 300 years before the timeline of the main game. This convoluted understanding of time is spawned from a certain serpent's dialogue.
Heavens, you have done it! You have retrieved the Lord Vessel after 1,000 years. It is you. It is really you.
I'm pretty sure this might be more of like a localization thing where like 1,000 years can obviously very literally mean 1,000 years. However, as I was talking about with the ending, with Ronnie's ending in Elden Ring, she says she's going to go on a 1,000-year journey, but that could be meant more metaphorically in terms of like an age-long journey. So this might just be a case of taking Framped a little bit too literally, but not that I really think that like contradicts what Eredin is saying. I'm just trying to give some extra context here. Framped moment, yeah.
For 1,000 years, Framped has waited for Lord Gwyn to be succeeded by another. The fading of flame illuminated Gwyn's weakness, and since then, the serpents of both light and dark have sought a new lord. The fading of the flames and return of the cold dark was also prophesied by the blacksmith deity. When the blacksmith deity passed, from the slabs great beasts arose. The Titanite demons represent the form that the nameless blacksmith once took. His missing leg suggests his origins. Hephaestus is the Greek god of blacksmithing, metalworking, carpenters, craftsmen, artisans, sculptures, metallurgy, and fire. He's also thought to be the son.
So, I know that's come up again. I don't actually remember whether or not there's anything in the game which directly links the blacksmith to being lame like that, other than the potential Hephaestus connection. And if they want to go that route, why would they go so far as to say that the blacksmith was headless too because these things lack heads? Not that I disagree with the idea. I'm just I don't remember if there's anything direct about this. I think this idea might have first been posed by Hawkshaw, but I don't know.
Sculptures, metallurgy, and fire. He's also thought to be the son of Zeus, and that he was either born lame or was made lame when he was expelled from Olympus. The definition of lame reads, unable to walk without difficulty as the result of an injury or illness affecting a leg or foot. If the blacksmith deity's design is inspired by Hephaestus, could the relationship with his father also help us understand this nameless character? To answer that, let's turn our attention to another blacksmith. In early concepts of the game, Andre was a descendant of Lord Gwyn. His appearance, dialogue, and lip movement are all echoes of that once important role. It is my opinion that a lot of the ideas that were intended for Andre found themselves being integrated into the design of the blacksmith deity. If you believe this to be true, then this may help further understand as to why Lord Gwyn would go to war with Izalith. The blacksmith deity expelled from Olympus sought comfort in those that dwell within the earth. He used the flesh of titans to help create new life that would go on to flourish and rival his father's kingdom. Returning to the timeline and mention of 1,000 years, we also hear this figure from one of the daughters of chaos.
Free mother and my sisters from the flame of chaos. I cannot do it myself. I lack the strength and the bravery. But you, I realize what I am asking. But please, free their poor souls. Mother's ambitions were misguided, no doubt. But surely 1,000 years of atonement is enough.
Quelana is not to be so easily trusted. She tells half-truths and manipulates the minds of men. We will discuss her agenda later, but for now, let's define atonement.
Yeah, I'm very curious as to why he thinks she speaks half-truths as well. Just because I don't remember anything that she says as standing out to me. And if she does say something like half-truth, maybe I'll add it to my collection of the inconsistencies and hearsay Miro board that I've got going on. Quelana and her own misleading information? Maybe. I don't remember. Okay. Yeah, you feel like every Souls game has underexplained the story and history of smithing? You could, just get rid of those last 3 words there, and you'd be right. 18 Sith, nice to see you again.
The definition for atonement reads, the action of making amends for a wrong or injury, or, in religious context, reparation or expiation for sin. The goddess of sin is Velka. Her agents can be found within Izalith, but we cannot know when they met their demise, as I believe Velka had already been removed from Anolondo shortly before the war with the demons. The individual now in charge of her former covenant is Gwendolyn. How he came to be in possession of the covenant is a story for another day, but Velka's removal from the heavens is made clear elsewhere. The painted world was once her sanctuary. The relics of her church and teachings are found scattered within. After her removal, it was repurposed, and it now serves as a prison for those who are deemed dangerous to the gods. And this is where we return to the Xanthus King Jeremiah. A mysterious item once worn by the Xanthus King Jeremiah, the legendary exile. No one knows where it came from. The crown bears high-quality cloth, which is quite soft to the touch, but its bright yellow colours stings the eyes, and it is clearly far too big. This crown hides a secret. Hidden beneath is a parasite. The king too bonded with the gifts of chaos and practiced its powerful magic. Like his daughters, he cherished flame, but the flame he no longer held was that for his queen. His love for her had been extinguished as he found himself engulfed by another. If the Xanthus crown is traded with Snuggly the Crow, the item given in return is the Ring of Favour and Protection. A ring symbolising the favour and protection of the goddess Fina. known in legend to possess fateful beauty. Could the witch's transformation into the bed of chaos have caused her king to find beauty elsewhere? Could this forbidden love go on to produce forbidden fruit? This ring is granted to those who enter a covenant with Guinevere, daughter of Lord Gwyn and the princess.
I don't know why he's bringing up this ring, but just to speak to the snuggly stuff, I don't take a lot of it too seriously, and it's a little bit of a stretch for me to accept that Xanthus King Jeremiah might have had like a relationship with Fina or something along those lines, and that isn't to say that it couldn't happen, because we do get like the soul of Manus, or pursuers from giving the bird the soul of Manus. So there could be arguments, but a lot of the other items just kind of tend to be a little bit trash and don't really directly follow what they came from sometimes.
Of sunlight. This slightly worn ring boosts the synergy of miracles. The Princess of Sunlight left Anolondo along with many other deities and later became wife to flame god Flan. I believe that this flame god Flan was the child of both Fina and King Jeremiah, and that Fina left with her son when Guinevere departed. On the topic of Guinevere's leaving, perhaps there is more to her abandonment than just the fading of the flame. Perhaps she needed to leave so that she could marry the one she loves. That her love for a god whose family once went to war with her father may have been considered a sin.
Go back, forbidden be these parts, the realm of the creatures of chaos. They accept their banished fate. Go back, lest the flames devour all, and the children of chaos feed upon your charred ashes. Those who defy the pact, those who trespass Quelaag's domain, may you feel the depth of our wrath.
As I mentioned earlier, a pact concluded the war. Anolondo was the victor, but victory was not solely won due to the might of Gwyn and his knights. The bat-winged demons turned against their kin. The blood upon their hands symbolised this betrayal. This imagery is also used in the beginning intro. Seath betrayed his kind so that he could obtain that which he never possessed.
I like that little parallel there between like the blood-stained hands.
Is this then true for the bat-winged demons? Is their betrayal spawned from a want of a thing they never had? Their weaponry describes them as lesser demons. Perhaps Gwyn offered them more power and rank that chaos had never allowed them to have. Further signs of demons worshipping the heavens is the sunlight maggots and the item that they can drop. A loathsome parasite that inhibits lost Izalith. It is completely immobile, yet still lives. When worn on the head, it emanates blinding light, which is why it is known as a sunlight maggot. When worn, this parasite resembles the crown of the dark sun, and possibly the warrior of sunlight emblem. If killed, the item they drop also strengthens the bond between chaos and light. This faintly worn medal, engraved with the symbol of the sun, is the ultimate honour awarded to those who summon the warrior of sunlight and complete a goal. The symbol represents Lord Gwyn's firstborn, who lost his deity status and was expunged from the annals.
No, he lost the annals. We're told this in other items.
But the old god of war still watches closely over his warriors. Similar to the bat-winged demons, did Gwyn's firstborn also promise strength and power to those who called Izalith home? Are these medals a reward for their cooperation during the war?
That's one of those things where I just kind of take it as more of a gameplay mechanic, that they tie in the sunlight maggots to the warriors of sunlight, because that's like the last place you find Solaire. I don't know if I really want to think like the sunlight maggots were munching on a ton of warriors of sunlight, or whether or not the Nameless King could have bestowed them to those maggots directly, because that just seems to kind of sort of contradict his alignment with the ancient dragons. I don't know like when that exactly happened, especially in relation to like the Chaos Flames birth, but I don't know. Scaleless had a theory that Solaire was using the co-op mechanic to practice the boss fight so he'd have an easy time when he did it for real. Maybe, who knows?
We do not know how long the war lasted, but eventually a line was drawn and demands were made. The Xanthus King Jeremiah I believe to be a victim of this peace, as I do not think he was captured, but that he was instead surrendered. Further signs of Izalith surrendering its citizens can be found within the Northern Undead Asylum. In the time of the Chosen Undead, those branded with the curse are corralled and sent north. Here they are locked away to await the end of the world. That is until a nameless knight throws down a corpse which holds a key. But freedom is not so easily earned. There is another door that needs opening, and it is guarded by a demon. This demon patrols the roof and is responsible for fatally injuring the man who liberated you from your cell. When opening the double doors, you are met with an entrance that would weaken the knees of the bravest of men. Here you now stand face to face with the Asylum demon.
Yeah, I never really got that vibe, but I mean, I guess it could make sense. I just kind of thought like Oscar inadvertently fell through another part of the building, which is where he kind of landed up where he did. But yeah, maybe he could have gotten smacked down by the demon. That could make sense.
This demon is not a prisoner.
Hey, Tyler.
His coat is turned and he enjoys his duty. He ensures that no one escapes. He is committed to his role. He is committed to the asylum. However, the same cannot be said for the thing that lurks below. The many hallways hum and howl with the soaring high wind atop this mountain. But there is yet another sound that can be heard rattling the walls of this mad house. That sound is the sharp snapping of bones under a heavy foot. The reason for this many bones is because of the cruelty that is capable at the hands of men. Before they joined the ranks of the undead, the guards passed the time by throwing defenseless prisoners in with this beast. Prisoners that when killed would soon return beside a bonfire, ready to do it all again. The name of this ferocious beast is the Stray Demon. The definition of stray reads, not in the right place, separated from the group or target. He is far from home and unlike his kin above, is not enjoying his circumstance. If the Asylum demon is able to enter the Stray Demon's arena, they quickly become enemies. Is this a design oversight or a hint at the rivalry between these two demons? The weapon wielded by the Asylum demon may give us an answer. Demon weapon built from the stone arch trees, used by lesser demons at Northern Undead Asylum. This hammer is imbued with no special power, but will merrily beat foes to a pulp, providing you have the strength to wield it. This weapon was not carved from the bones of fellow demons. This weapon was purposely built. It is a reward granted to those for their service, being yet another example of lesser demons finding comfort in the sun and turning their back on chaos. The asylum predates the undead curse. The graves outside indicate its history and age. It is my belief that it once held all manner of prisoners. Similar to how the painted world now serves as a storehouse for the unwanted, the asylum held those who posed a threat to the gods. This theory may help us understand as to why the peculiar doll can be found here, as this was once the place where a young Priscilla was kept. The Iron Ring too is a relic of a prisoner who predates this now undead asylum. This ring was used to shackle the guilty. It is terribly rusted and faintly stained with blood. Those who find this strange ring to their liking will be pleased to find it easier to gain footing on poor ground such as swamps.
Was this item in the base game or did it get added with the remaster? I know that was definitely a thing for Demon Souls, but yeah, I just don't really remember. Not that it like really matters, it just kind of just stuck out to my mind for whatever reason. So yeah, I still don't have very strong feelings about whether or not like the stray demon was not following orders and whether or not the asylum demon was. Perhaps maybe they just like kept the stray demon imprisoned for whatever reason. So there might be something to it. It is a little bit weird that we have demons appear in the undead asylum because they're not supposed to be there according to like some of the denizens. So there might have been some kind of system where some demons were incorporated into like Gwyn's fiefdom, which is certainly true with like the lesser demons. So yeah, I don't know. The Iron Ring is the best ring. You're totally forgetting about the Ring of Favor and Protection, Clown Scum. Outside Fog and Silent Rings? Yeah, what did I say? Did I say Undead Asylum? Yeah, I totally meant the Undead Burg. Thank you. It could have been an actual asylum at one point, or maybe use the other meaning of asylum, and it was some sort of faraway refuge. Huh. I wonder what the Japanese is for that. Yeah, I'll try to look it up during this next part.
Blighttown was yet to be blighted during the war with the demons. So, who was this sinner and where did they hail from? Beneath Izalith can be found poisonous terrain. This bog is like rot beneath the floorboards, and potentially it predates the city's construction. Warned by the witch Quelana of Izalith, mother of pyromancy and daughter of chaos, she wore this gold hem black cloak even before the Age of Fire, and it offers strong resistance versus fire, poison and other perils. Even before the Age of Fire, the Flame Witches wore attire that protected them against poison. These girls grew up around hot lava, flowing magma and poisonous springs. In uneven and unpredictable terrain such as this, a good balance and stable feet would benefit those that called such a place home. This set is acquired when taken from a corpse that is watched over by the youngest of Izalith's children. When taken, he is enraged, you have stolen from his beloved sister. But this attire states that it belonged to Quelana, who is one of the 7 daughters of Chaos, and she is not deceased.
Okay, that's a funny way to like look at it. So he's I assume he's gonna say the Quelana that we meet is not the real Quelana. If so, that could actually make the Dark Souls 3 set be true. So like, okay, for anybody who may not know, in Dark Souls 3 we have the, what item is it? I think it's like one of the tomes that you pick up. It might be like the Izalith Pyromancy tome, and it says like Quelana never took another apprentice or a pupil. When, depending on one's actions in Dark Souls 1, they could have become an apprentice to Quelana. The Japanese for that line is more ambiguous and it uses, it is said she never took another apprentice or a pupil. But if Eredin here is correct in saying, well, at least, I mean, I'm assuming he's going to say that like Quelana actually died, then that description could actually be more on the truthful side rather than just like the deliberately obfuscated side. Hey 0083, welcome back in. You think he'll say Quelana faked her death? No, we got a case of a stolen identity, perhaps, which is a really fun theory. That kind of makes more sense. I don't necessarily agree with it. At first, my initial impression was, oh, like, that's obviously a bit of a dev error, but maybe he's onto something here.
One of the 7, so let's account for the other 6. 2 daughters were engulfed along with their mother, now protected by their oldest sister. 2 binded with the gifts of chaos, and the last cannot be found. To figure out this missing person, let's finally discuss Quelana.
I have a favour to ask. My mother, the Witch of Izalith, was one of the primeval lords. Her power came from the soul that she found near the first flame. She focused this power to light a flame of her own. But she failed to control it. The flame of chaos engulfed Mother and my sisters and moulded them into deformed creatures. Only I escaped. And now I am here, but my mother and sisters have been in anguish since. I beseech you, free mother and my sisters from the flame of chaos. I cannot do it myself. I lack the strength and the bravery. But you, I realize what I am asking. But please, free their poor souls. Mother's ambitions were misguided, no doubt. But surely 1,000 years of atonement is enough.
As I've stated, this witch tells half-truths, but even when incomplete, they are priceless. It is believed by many that the Witch of Izalith duplicated the flame to extend the Age of Fire. Her soul was found near the flame, and as it faded, she would too. This being enough reason as to why this master manipulator of fire would even think to attempt this. But it was not desperation that led her, it was ambition. The definition of ambition reads, a strong desire to do or achieve something. Desire, not desperation. Her daughters are evidence of her fertility and her ability to create life. She desired to play God by using the soul of her unborn child to manipulate this new flame. A flame that would allow her to be the ultimate mother, the ultimate creator, the ultimate God. She flew too close to the sun and grew wings of anguish. She capitalized on this suffering and was able to bear fruit. Her roots dug deep, and from her leaves new life came to be. But the foundation was unstable and the water poisoned. During the beginning intro, we see all 7 daughters of Chaos. They accompany their mother in the war with the dragons and ritual. I believe the smallest, and therefore youngest, to be Quelana. A young girl with little comprehension of the world, simply following in the footsteps of her sisters and mother, could not have predicted the outcome. Everything she knew was never to be the same. Her mother, her sisters, her people, even her heart. Sadness turned to hate. She began to despise what had been done and wished to see it put to an end. I believe Quelana played a part in the war with Anolondo, that she may have provided them with vital information on how to best approach her mother's creations and magics. I also think her to be responsible for the fate of the missing daughter of Chaos, that the robe she wears belongs to her sister, and that she faked her own death to cover up her involvement with the war. The missing sister was captured and sent to the asylum, the now rusted shackle being all that remains of her sin. The rest were banished, a result of the pact. The city was lost, it was to be left alone, and never again found. Thank you for watching, guys. Please remember to like, and if you are new, subscribe.
I was wishing that he was going to go in a little bit more detail there. I was initially thinking that part of the half-truths that he was going to mention was Quelana saying that her mother did her thing 1,000 years ago, and then she taught Salamon pyromancies more than 200 years ago. But if the events in Ulasil occurred 300 years ago, and they modified pyromancies to create some of their hexes, then that wouldn't connect. Although I don't remember if they said that they modified hexes, or I guess hexes weren't a term back then, whether it was like a pyromancy or sorcery. So maybe I'm just kind of forgetting. Let me look up Ulasil real quick. I thought there was something that talked about it. Okay, right. So we have Black Flame, which says, it's a pyromancy discovered from the dark of the abyss by a pyromancer who wandered into Ulasil. Conjure a great black flame in one's palm. So again, if the events in Ulasil took place 300 plus years ago, and Quelana only taught Salamon 200 years ago, then perhaps the Quelana that we see isn't the Quelana that taught the true Salamon, but who knows? Was there anything else that he was saying that I wanted to talk about? Oh yeah, so Nothingness kind of brought it back up that I do think it could be possible that Quelana could have tried to help Gwyn aid them in defeating her mother, especially after she saw the Witch of Izalith and her like sisters get warped into malformed creatures that were just kind of like in constant pain and agony, perhaps. So overall, I think that was a pretty good video. It was really tight. There were a couple parts that I had like some mild disagreements with, but like nothing that was egregious by any means. And if anything, it just shows that I need to do a little bit more research, which is very welcome, because, well, I have a decent knowledge of Dark Souls. It's by no means like encyclopedic, kind of like my Bloodborne memory. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed that video, go ahead and give him a like and a sub, and the link is in the chat now. So that was The Witch of Izalith, and next we'll go into a related topic with Pyromancy by Eredin.
Greetings, chosen undead. In this video, I'll be exploring Pyromancy, its origin, its evolution, its location, and more. I encourage you to watch my previous video that discussed the events of Izalith and its inhabitants. Doing so will allow my points and perspective to be clear, as there will be times where I'll refer back to my previous work. To begin, let's discuss the birth of Pyromancy, but before doing so, please remember to like, subscribe, and ring that bell of awakening. Within the description of Chaos Storm, it is stated that the Witch of Izalith attempted to copy the first flame, and in doing so, the flame of chaos was spawned, a twisted bed of life. It was the witch and her daughter's understanding of the primeval flame sorceries that allowed this event to occur. The witch was transformed, with the roots of her ruin representing her change. But her downfall was at first steady and controlled. She was able to bring new life into this world. Her children were taught the flame arts, and a new culture flourished in the flames. Then, as her knowledge and understanding increased, Pyromancy was born.
So yeah, I guess one thing that I did want Eredin to talk about a little bit more on his last video was just the connection between ambition and Izalith. I have really mixed feelings about that, because I do wonder if it's meant to be taken literally that Izalith's ambition literally spawned the Chaos Flame, because that kind of symbolism does come back in the time of Dark Souls 3 with the Profane Flame, but for whatever reason, the Profane Flame does seem to be distinct from the Chaos Flame, and it's said to like never stop burning, which makes me wonder whether or not like the Profane Flame was the quote-unquote stabilized version of the Chaos Flame, but that doesn't exactly track with how it is said to have been spawned from the curses of the oracles in the Profane Capital. So, yeah. Anyway, if ambition was used to spawn the Chaos Flame, I think somebody could make the argument that darkness could be part of the fuel of the Chaos Flame, because of the way that certain emotions are equated with the dark, with like I always forget the actual description for this, or like what item it was. Pretty sure it's a pyromancy. No, it's like a dark spell in Dark Souls 3. I'm gonna type in Locus. Nope, wrong game. Okay. Profound Still in DS2 says, it's a hex born of jealousy and humiliation, and it's a locus of dark thoughts, the very things that reflect the true essence of life itself. Well, I guess life isn't necessarily dark, or like, not all life is dark, but I think that kind of is good enough to put forth that claim now. Yeah, the Icarus myth also, ambition, flame, self-destruction. Yeah, and the interesting thing to me about that is these kind of like dark emotions are associated with literal darkness. So does the Chaos Flame get spawned from darkness? Is it a flame of darkness? I don't necessarily think so. I do think that the Chaos Flame will burn darkness in addition to souls, and it's just kind of concerned with burning as much as it can. Like, it's a flame that's too hot to be controlled, metaphorically speaking, and so whatever it comes into contact with fuels it, because it just tries to use like excess power, which kind of eats away at the wielder, if that makes sense. I kind of like flubbing what I'm trying to say. Can I check the Demon Prince's soul? Are you talking about the DS3 one? It says common chaos, makes you think about multiple chaos flames existing. Too hot to handle, too cold to hold. Demon Prince soul. Common chaos. Oh, okay. So, yeah. So the common chaos here, it means common as in like the same chaos, but the Japanese for it is like the one, which literally it means one, but it means like the same form of it. So like the one chaos is what produced the demons, essentially. So demons are all like from the same chaos. Sorry for being a little bit repetitive there. Hopefully that answers your question. Oh, actually, yeah, no, I don't think there's like multiple chaoses that go along with that. Even though it says like the one chaos, could it imply a two chaos? I don't think so. I think it's supposed to be a specific reference to like the bed of chaos is one chaos. All right. Good questions though. Let's go back to the video.
Her flame witches cast aside their wooden wands as they themselves became the catalyst for this new power. The first pyromancies were fierce forms of fire, unpredictable but powerful. Their deep red colours represent the chaos in which they were delivered from. The eldest daughter of Chaos is one of two individuals who can wield Chaos Fire Whip. By following evolution, we can see the dilution of pyromancy as it became taught and then understood by the masses. From chaos, the primal fire whip pyromancy was born.
Yeah, and it's always been interesting to me that witch outside of the Witch of Izalith fight uses like literal pyromancies rather than just having something a little bit more unique and distinct to represent flame sorceries. Not that it's a big deal.
Is taught to the player from Quelana. In my previous video, I theorized that Quelana was the youngest daughter of the Witch of Izalith. So to begin, we have one of the first and therefore oldest pyromancies wielded by the eldest daughter, and as wisdom comes with age, the youngest Quelana was able to interpret these teachings to create a similarly primal but less powerful pyromancy.
Alright, so I thought about bringing this up at the last video, but I'm a little bit curious as to how he's trying to distinguish the Quelana that we learned spells from versus what I think he believes is the true Quelana in like the ceaseless discharge area. So does he think this one is the youngest one and the one that died was not the youngest? I think he could have just helped differentiate them ever so slightly just to make things a little bit clearer. I think people can still more or less intuit what he's talking about, but it might become more problematic later. I don't know.
Following these lessons, Fire Whip is said to be the root of combustion, and because of its power, it is difficult to wield. Combustion is an elementary level pyromancy, one known to all pyromancers. This dilution is the result of around 1,000 years of understanding and the teachings of flame. The witch and her daughters were gods, their rich souls no doubt helping to mitigate any harm that comes from folding flame. But as the teachings spread and mortal man wished to learn these lessons, the power became weakened so that no harm would come to them. In the modern days of Dark Souls,
So Tyler says that you think he believes Quelana is the one still alive teaching us. At least that's what you got from what he was saying. I feel like that is kind of what he was saying, but he was implying the true Quelana was dead. So if the true Quelana is dead, I would argue the person who teaches us should not be considered Quelana. Hopefully that tracks.
In the modern days of Dark Souls, Izalith is not known as the home of Pyromancy, only its birthplace. That title goes to the Great Swamp. The Great Swamp is said to be an eerie place where heretics face prejudice for their atypical looks. To understand these people and the questionable rumours that surround them, we must first inspect them. The people of the Great Swamp are primitive who only use the most basic everyday tools and methods to survive. Their weapon of choice is a hand axe, ideal for lumberjacking. The abundance of wood and scarce metal is also reflected upon the tattered cloth robe, which displays small fragments of chainmail protection, and second, on their cracked wooden shield, whose sustained damage has caused the iron banding to become loose, further decreasing its stability. Also forming their attire is not only cloth and sparse metal, but leather. The hides of an animal cross over the shoulders, and thick heavy booted trousers protect their legs and feet, the soles of which are said to be nearly impenetrable. Dangling around their necks are rough-cut gemstones whose threading resembles a thin vine. This janky jewellery helps further solidify their lower lifestyle. These people may be mocked for what they lack, however they choose to live like this, as all of their attention and care is put towards the understanding of flame. Their attire represents a lack of rich resources, but also a society who does not hold much value in war and protection. These people are united, driven out because of their beliefs and practices, and the only thing that they protect themselves from is the dangers of traversing a rough and rugged landscape. But why are they here? Who choose?
Yeah, so nothingness says they know it might not be strong evidence, but when we give Quaylana's tome to Corin in Dark Souls 3, he says, "So she returned home. The corpse holding the tome is almost embracing the fair lady's corpse, so you think Quaylana was real and returned." And yeah, that's what I was going to say if he was going to talk about the possibility that the sister that was dead was the true Quaylana. But since he didn't delve into it more deeply, I didn't necessarily feel the need to go into that. But maybe I should have, just to kind of like dot my I's and J's and cross my T's and X's. So yeah, I did wonder that as well, because even if you don't want to say that was the real Quaylana, the fact that she goes back and has the Quaylana Pyromancy tome is kind of interesting. Although maybe perhaps in Eredin's case here, you could say the youngest daughter, or whichever daughter, took the tome from the true Quaylana, as well as her robes initially. But it just doesn't read as touching to me, or like satisfying to me, to think that one of the witches stole the other witch's identity. Like, I don't understand what she would really get out of it, I guess. But that's kind of why I think it's more of a dev error to say that the robe of Quaylana actually belonged to Quaylana, but I get where he's going from with that. It's perfectly fine to me to like say that like it must be canon because it makes sense, but I just feel like the broader implications of it are just kind of like fall flat. So yeah, Stella, nice to see you again. Welcome on in.
Chooses to live within a swamp. Well, it was not a choice, but a result of eviction. The tattered cloth hood, robe, and manchettes all mention that they were driven out into the hinterlands. A hinterland is an area behind a coast or shoreline of a river. These low wetlands are rich in nutrients and nature and are home to many fish, birds, and other animals.
So the Japanese that I'm going to assume that hinterland comes from, because they use it for like a bunch of other stuff in the FromSoft games, is probably more along the lines of like Outlands rather than like hinterlands. So, or Borderlands, that'd be probably another good one. So Fringe Lands, whatever you want to call it. So I don't think we should take this part super literally here. Scaleless says she's probably some type of spirit. You can't even see her until your pyromancy flame is strong enough Oh, that's an interesting... Well, she has like a physical corpse after the fact in Dark Souls 3. But yeah, I was going to say, if she is a spirit, then like the dead version by Ceaseless could have been her. And like we're just interacting with her spirit. Yeah, that's a kind of cool headcanon though.
So, we understand the region, but not the reason for the arrival of pyromancers into this terrain. To understand that, we will first examine the names known to us. Beginning first with Laurentius. Laurentius is the name of an ancient Roman city and the Latin word for laurel, which is a symbol of victory, fame, honour and accomplishment. The importance behind the Latin translation will come into play later, but Laurentius' quest for accomplishment led him down to the lost city of Izalith. However, his adventure was cut short and he became a symbol for sorrow, next in line for the butcher's block. When he returns to Firelink upon being freed, he tells the player the words of his master.
My teacher, whom I imagine still resides in the Great Swamp, had a funny way of putting it. He said that pyromancy is the ultimate fantasy. We are born into dark and warmed by fire, but this fire we cannot touch. Those whose fascination with fire persists learn to hold it in their own hand. He rather had a way with words, the old withering frog.
His master is referred to as a he and spoken about as if he is still alive. This withering old frog is who I believe to be Salamon. Salamon was the pupil to Quelana of Izalith. He met the witch under the same circumstances as the player. However, unlike the player, Salamon was already a master upon finding the Daughter of Chaos. His mastery of the flame is what no doubt led Quelana to reveal herself to him. But this meeting occurred over 200 years ago, according to the witch, putting Salamon above 200 years old in the timeline of the Chosen Undead.
Alright, and I guess I probably should have come up with my thoughts about my hypotheticals at the end of his last episode. So I think even his pseudo-fake Quelana could be telling the truth with the 200-year-old story if we take the whole time is convoluted line into consideration. So, for those who may not know, Solaire's line of time being convoluted is slightly different in the Japanese, where he says it more along the lines of time is stagnant, which I think does have a lot of relevance in helping us understand characters like Logan's return to Lordran. Maybe not return to Lordran, but appearance in Lordran, because I think when we talked to the Crestfallen Warrior, or maybe it was Greg's of Vinheim. No, maybe not Greg's. Who's the other dude? I can't think of the other guy's name. They say like, oh, Logan's here in the flesh, but he should have like died like hundreds of years ago, something along those lines. So if time is literally stagnating, it might be converging on itself because of like the effect of the waning flame. And if light is time in Dark Souls, with the fire fading, there's less light, there's less time. So does that mean things are converging back to the beginning and the end? I don't necessarily know like if it's that strong a thing, but things that should have ended a long time ago in the past don't actually seem to fully end, and they might just kind of like get distorted into the future. And that's not even to speak of like the weird time travel feat that Manus manages to do by pulling us into the past. So, and people can be undead, true. So, Scaleless had a really interesting point that I think is cool to share, in that a swamp would be a good place to practice fire magic since it would be harder to start forest fires there. That's a very true statement, perhaps. Maybe not very true. I guess just like the added water in the wood and stuff could make it more difficult. But yeah, okay. Going back, Rickert, thank you, Conscom. Going back to the video.
As we've discussed, combustion is an elementary level pyromancy, and a master cannot claim that mantle without first practicing and perfecting the basics. So who taught the teacher, Answering that question is the key to understanding how pyromancy came to leave Izalith and settle within the distant lands. During the events of the Chosen Undead, the protagonist comes across all but one Daughter of Chaos. In my previous video, I theorized the clothes that Quelana is wearing are the robes of a missing sister, and that the rusted iron ring is a relic of the imprisonment of that missing sister within the now undead asylum. However, I'd like to present a different theory, or maybe perhaps a continuation of that theory, as only the chain remained and not the prisoner. The disappearance of the unknown Daughter of Chaos, I believe, was due to the war with Gwyn and the demons. I can only theorize her reasons, but perhaps she disagreed with the events of her home and the direction it had taken. She left the city of Izalith and Lordran, taking with her those that followed her teachings and agreed with her reasoning. They travelled far and chose to settle within civilization, which later they were driven from. The Japanese version of the game calls pyromancers shamans. A shaman means a person regarded as having access to and influence in the world of good and evil spirits. Typically, such people enter a trance-like state during rituals, divination, and healing.
Yeah, so that's kind of true, and this is kind of where I would tie it back into like Jujutsu Kaisen specifically, because the word is a lot more disambiguated today, where Jujutsu does kind of have like this more shamanic practice, and it's kind of associated with curses, which is like where the first character comes from. But in certain contexts, it can just mean more along the lines of like magic, but with connotations more along the lines of like black magic specifically, if that makes sense.
State during rituals, divination, and healing. Who do we see practicing rituals? The Witch of Izalith and her daughters. Souls are the fire of life, and the spectrum of good and evil is covered when inspecting all known pyromancy. These shamans were taught by their flame witch, whose practice and preaching led them to be chased out into the hinterlands. Further evidence of this witchcraft practice is the name Carmina. Carmina is the most talented pupil that Salomon produced. Her name translates to mean song in Latin. Witches and their rituals are rarely depicted in a quiet, controlled space. Often it involves chanting, song, dance, and bloody practices around an item, person, or flame. Now that we have touched upon the possible reason for their exile into the hinterlands, let's return to the matter of exactly where they were driven from. For civilization to develop and flourish, there are key components required. One is water. Settlements are positioned near water sources such as rivers, oceans, lakes, and streams. This allows for clean drinking water, and another key component, agriculture. Once food is grown, it can then be traded for other goods and even services, which in turn further advances a civilization.
Money could be traded for goods and services.
As mentioned earlier, hinterlands, and therefore swamps, are located behind a coast or shoreline of a river, where the wetlands are rich in nutrients and wildlife. This location would be the ideal land to farm and feed a family, village, town, or city. Thankfully, the game provides us with the ideal people for this job. When creating a character, you can choose a preset called Delta Farmer. This reads, the Five-Finger Delta is the home of farmers and commoners. Finding a commoner lacking some form of physical blemish is a rare sight indeed.
Interesting.
The use of the class of commoner indicates a local hierarchy, and that point we will continue with shortly. For now, let's discuss the Five-Finger Delta. Deltas are wetlands that form as rivers, emptying their water and sediment into another body of water, such as an ocean, lake, or another river. A river moves more slowly as it nears its mouth or end. This causes sediment, solid material carried downstream by currents, to fall to the river bottom. The slowing velocity of the river and the buildup of sediment allows the river to break its single channel as it nears the mouth, hence the name Five-Finger Delta. Due to the many breaks in current, I believe the river that the fingers crawl from is dumping into an ocean, and sat beside the nutritious knuckles of the Five Fingers is a town whose royalty rules over the local farmer and commoners. This town is named Venheim. Now, before we continue, I'd like to turn your attention to Dark Souls 2. Within Dark Souls 2, there is a kingdom called Melfia. Within Melfia is the Melfian Magic Academy, where sorcerers from all over come to learn about magic and pyromancy. The relationship between the soul arts and the flame sorceries is a positive one within Dark Souls 2. However, the same cannot be said for its predecessor. This distrust and distaste for pyromancers is felt within item descriptions and character dialogue. Great Combustion reads, "Pyromancy which improves upon combustion. Create a powerful giant flame in hand." Great Combustion creates a powerful flame, but many sorcerers mock the simplicity of this spell. Laurentius of the Great Swamp is just that. He is of the Great Swamp. No one dares enter or go near the Great Swamp due to the many rumours and conspiracies that surround the exiled shamans. So for sorcerers to know and openly mock Great Combustion indicates that they must have frequently witnessed it, possibly when the pyromancers lived within Venheim.
That one's a little bit of a
the
stretch.
creation of Great Combustion predates Laurentius' birth, but the experiences of his people he possesses as it was passed down to him as teachings masquerading as warnings. Laurentius tells the player that pyromancy has a rather primitive aspect, and because of that it messes poorly with advanced culture, and that pyromancers are considered rather unsavoury. I wonder if an incident within an advanced culture led to the exile of his people.
I think with the Dragon School being in Vinheim, you might be able to suggest that there could have been studies into both pyromancy and sorcery, specifically when we consider that the origins of pyromancy are rooted in quote-unquote flame sorcery. So sorcery was associated with fire to some degree in the past.
An advanced culture can mean technology, medicine, trade, and practice. Countries typically ruled by faith are held back and not as advanced, as science can be seen as heretical and going against God, which fits nicely within the medieval setting that Dark Souls is pulling from.
I think he's right here, but just to speak about this point he's obviously not talking about the game, because like intellect is kind of antithetical to the gods in Dark Souls, which is kind of funny. But anyway, just wanted to point that out if you guys thought about that too.
The medieval setting that Dark Souls is pulling from. Not only that, but the soul arts themselves are seen as advanced, as only exceptional beings with remarkable understandings of the mind and body can begin the undertaking of weaponizing the soul. To further support the positioning and placement of Venheim upon a coast with the Great Swamp further inland, we will need to go to the converging lands of Lothric. Within Dark Souls 3 is a vast ocean. This ocean and those that are positioned upon its coast have a caged and contained swamp further inland known as Farron's Keep. Without going into the lore of these areas, the continued and consistent geographical positioning should help bolster my theory on Venheim and its neighbouring pyromancers. So far we've discussed the Great Swamp, its people, its position, its practices, and how pyromancy came to leave Izalith. We've briefly mentioned the names of the well-known, but now let's take a deeper look at the shamans of the swamp. First is the unknown daughter of chaos. If you believe in my theory of her being the person solely responsible for taking pyromancy out of Izalith, then it makes sense for her to have settled within Venheim, where she and her followers eventually fled from. The importance of Venheim also being a town plays into their displacement.
So does he think the unknown daughter is the one who can teach us in Blighttown, or is he saying like this is actually the real Quaylana? Because as far as the lore is concerned, this should be the real Quaylana if they're talking about the person who taught Salamon. But anyway.
If it were a city, then the amount of people and places to hide would mean anyone or people being evicted could take residence within the more overlooked parts of a city. But a town has far less people and fewer places to hide. With a smaller population, it is easier to get the people riled and start a witch hunt against a targeted group or individual. Moving on, I believe it is the female version of the pyromancer attire that indicates their origins. Visually, they are very similar. Both are a two-piece set dress featuring a hood, and both resist fire, poison, and other such similar perils. Furthermore, around the waist of the male attire is an unknown language. Could this text be the tongue of demons? In order to commune with the fair lady, you must possess the Old Witch Ring. This ring can be chosen as a starting gift. The description reads, "Old ring from an old witch, engraved minutely with indecipherable script, but seemingly useless." This language is not known or spoken outside of Izalith. It is a gift given to the chosen undead before their journey begins that allows them to talk this fiery tongue. You are returning something that was taken, a relic of the family who the unknown daughter, a former flame witch, fled from. So from my perspective, it only makes sense for this ring to be the gift that goes along with the pyromancer class. It is my belief that it was the unknown daughter of chaos who taught Salamon and made him into a master. It is she who told Salamon, the great fireball, to return to their ancestral home and seek out further knowledge, either via surviving relics or her surviving sisters.
A mere undead, yet you can see me. Fascinating. I am Quaylana of Izalith. I am not often revealed to walkers of flesh. You have a gift. Are you too one who seeks my pyromancy, like Salamon?
Salamon did indeed travel to seek out Quaylana. However, if my theory presented within my last video is completely true, then why would the fleeing unknown daughter of chaos instruct her most well-accomplished pupil to return to their ancestral home and seek out the one who sowed the seeds of her ruin? Well, perhaps Quaylana did have an involvement with the disappearance and supposed death of her sister, but not in the way that I initially thought. Perhaps Quaylana helped her sister as they both shared in the pain of seeing their mother and sisters give themselves to this corruptible and transformative power. So they both fled and faked their deaths, leaving their existence up to superstition.
Okay, so he does think that this Quaylana faked her death? Is that... I think that's what he's getting at. I would feel kind of awkward about that because of the corpse here and the way that the ceaseless discharge goes aggro when you pick this up, which is actually what Tyler had just asked in the chat momentarily ago, funnily enough.
Because of this shared view of events and opinions on their home, the unknown daughter trusted that her sister would aid her pupil, as Quaylana must have told the unknown daughter of her plans to remain relatively close by and out of sight of their home. Quaylana's available pyromancy proves the transaction between her and Salamon. To begin, she sells Fireball, which reads, "Standard pyromancy of the Great Swamp, hurl Fireball." The fire damage caused by fireballs makes them effective against corporeal beasts and undead, who by nature fear the flame. Next is Fire Orb, which is said to improve upon Fireball, meaning its origin must too lead back to the Great Swamp. And last...
So I feel like that is a bit of a fallacy here in that... Let's go back. Alright, Fireball, standard pyromancy of the Great Swamp. I think he's trying to say that it originates here, but I don't necessarily think you have to take that reading, because it could just be taught there and become a staple of the Great Swamp, but not necessarily originate from the Great Swamp, because it could have come from her, and then to make a little bit of a pun, it could have spread like wildfire amongst the pyromancers there, and with it being such an elementary spell, it would make sense that it would be very well known in a place of like fledgling pyromancers, I guess.
Corporeal beasts and undead, who by nature fear the flame. Next is Fire Orb, which is said to improve upon Fireball, meaning its origin must too lead back to the Great Swamp. And last is Great Fireball, which reads, Ultimate Fireball Pyromancy, hurl a giant fireball. Salamon, the Master Pyromancer, also called the Great Fireball after this spell, believed pyromancy was rooted in an adoration of fire. Those who acquire this spell usually agree. These three spells, Fireball, Fire Orb, and Great Fireball, show the evolution of understanding. We know the latter to be an invention of Salamon, and as one cannot exist without the other, then it is my belief that Salamon is responsible for all of these pyromancies. Pyromancy is split into three categories: Chaos, Primal, and Outland. Not all pyromancy created outside of Izalith originated within the Great Swamp, but that we will continue with later. Salamon had mastered the understandings of Outlander pyromancy, and so to further his knowledge he must get closer to the source, and this is what Quelana allowed him to do. Also worth mentioning, Quelana's possession of Great Combustion further supports my Venheim theory, as she has not shown herself to any other since Salamon. It is because of her secrecy that she did not deem Laurentius worthy, ending his search. Even
I'm gonna back that up. I just want to reread or like re-listen to what he said there, because
also worth mentioning, Quelana's possession of Great Combustion further supports my Venheim theory, as she has not shown herself to any other since Salamon.
So is he trying to say that the sorcerers mocked her because she also had combustion, or that he's saying she didn't really show herself much in Vinheim because they mocked the simplicity of the spell? It's a little bit strange to me. Like, I don't exactly agree with that, but I don't know.
It is because of her secrecy that she did not deem Laurentius worthy, ending his search. Even with his teachings of his master and his master's most renowned pupil, Carmina, he still wasn't mighty enough to meet the eyes of the witch.
Yeah, so that one's also difficult to describe, because he could have just incidentally gone hollow when he first reached the Great Swamp. We don't really know that. He could have also gone hollow for not having met Quelana, and he also could have gone hollow for having met Quelana and kind of accomplishing his goal, because there's kind of multiple ways that people go hollow. So yeah, his case is definitely one of the weirder ones. Nothingness says, you think he means sorcerers mock the simple one because she hasn't sown the Great Combustion to most. Okay, that could make sense. That's kind of what I thought he was getting at, but I mean, I don't think she would have like a lot of reason to, and if she was only teaching Salamon, it would make sense that people in Vinheim might not like know about it. But I think they were more or less mocking that spell specifically rather than like pyromancy in general, Which isn't to say that they like disdained pyromancy, but okay. Moving on.
The meaning of the name Carmina we have covered. However, her name can also be interpreted as the colour carmine, which shares the same colour tone as one of her pyromancies.
Yeah, and that's kind of what initially came to my mind when he brought up Carmina. So I was very curious why he mentioned like the song connection, but didn't do anything with it.
All three of Carmina's creations state that she harnessed the power of flame to actualize the inner self. But what does that actually mean? Self-actualization is the complete realization of one's potential and full development of one's abilities and appreciation of life. Those who share in this enlightenment often share notable characteristics such as the ability to cultivate deep and loving relationships with others. This perfectly matches the life and appreciation of the pyromancers. Out in the wilderness, they feed off the vibrant life to sustain their flames and then share this warmth with others in hopes to create a better understanding of themselves and the fire in which they are infatuated with. Carmina's actualization isn't the only reason why she became Salamon's most accomplished pupil. Another is due to her teachings being a self-aid that temporarily buffs the user so that they can accomplish a task. These boons come in many different forms. Iron Flesh boosts one's defense and resilience. However, using it requires caution as the caster becomes exceedingly heavy and unable to move freely. Clearly, this was intended to be used outside of the marshy swampland, as a heavy foot in that environment could mean death. Flash Sweat was also created with the intent of thwarting danger. When used, it greatly reduces fire damage. When practicing the folding of flame, it is likely common for beginners to succumb to burns on their hands and forearms. Even the godmother of pyromancy receives such burns herself during the long ago ritual. The spell also has an added benefit for the undead. Fire is one of the most effective ways to combat the curse, so increasing your resistance to it when travelling the world would most certainly come in handy. The third and final of Carmina's creations is one of a dark nature. Her secret is carried by a male corpse who was felled by the Prince of Izalith. Pyromancy of Carmina, who harnessed the power of flame to actualize the inner self. Short strength and endurance boost, but lose HP. Excessive power eats away at the life force of its caster, and like all dangerous spells, power within was kept secret for eons.
Yeah, and I think this is unironically one of the most important spells and descriptions that we get out of all Dark Souls lore, because this is stated as a matter of fact that excess power eats away at the life force of its caster, and I think that idea can be carried over into the way that curses work, just because of the things like the Chaos Blade. So they technically shouldn't be cursed, but they're also described as cursed. Like they're like a different kind of curse. But what does that mean if chaos is a curse? Well, when we look at the descriptions of like all the chaos stuff in Dark Souls 3, it mentions how chaos was part of like the primordial bed of life, or like scraps of chaos say that they were like scraps of life. So if chaos is life, which is kind of canonically accurate, then does life eat away at the life of its caster? I believe so, because when you use spells like Gnaw, which is, obviously more of a dark spell, it shows that darkness nibbles away at its target. The same principle is shown with like the Firekeeper's souls in Dark Souls 1, with humanity writhing underneath the surface of like the Firekeeper's bosoms to nibble away at their souls. And that kind of also scares, Arena in Dark Souls 3. So I don't think it's really just darkness that eats away at life. I think life does as well, which is why you have characters like Logan and Seath who peer into the souls directly, and crystals, which are like super concentrated forms of life. They begin to go mad and lose their minds as well. And I think the metaphorical candle gets burned at both ends by both souls, which are kind of representative by fire, and darkness, which is kind of representative of like hunger and insects, because the dark wants to nibble away at the life of the fire. So it kind of works both ways, perhaps. Yeah. So as Scaleless says, foreign life eats away at you. And that's kind of the way that I would describe it as well. Is there a real-life mythological root for this excess power sapping at life? Maybe. It would be kind of hard to state. Like, I know there are many cultures, or like maybe not cultures, but like stories that talk about like the way that like ghosts eat away at people. And you could kind of make arguments about that, but I don't know if I would like point to any one thing specifically here.
Humans are unique in their ability to harbour pieces of the dark soul. The furtive pygmy, so easily forgotten, split the fourth Lord Soul between the humans. In the time of the undead, it is the dark soul which is the fuel for the fire, with the fake prophecy leading the supposed chosen to their doom. Humanity is used to strengthen chaos. The higher the count, the more potent the power. An infinite source for this fuel is fire keepers. Fire keepers are all women, givers of life, whose souls are described as a breeding ground for the nibbling dark. As Carmina is herself a woman, I believe that this is what enabled her to discover this power. Although perhaps it can be better controlled by a woman, men can also wield this wonder.
That's an interesting idea. I don't really have a strong disagreement against it, but obviously it's just more in the realm of headcanon because we can't say how like factual it really is.
Power within is corrosive in nature, and because of this, Carmina noticed the similarities between her creation and the creation of another. Throughout the Great Swamp's existence, there is only one whose design was deemed as heresy by the heretics. Engi came to Lordran possibly to seek out the relics of his Pyro predecessors. Similar to the Great Swamp not being the chosen place to live, Blighttown is not a place you'd visit for its clean streets and shapely architecture. However, the place wasn't always this dire. It was a town before its blight. To understand when the irreversible change occurred, we will briefly discuss New Londo. Ingrid was one of the three commissioned with the sealing of the city. The gates were closed and its people drowned, all to stop the spreading of the abyss. Since the swallowed suffering, the other two sealers abandoned their duties, leaving only Ingrid. When talking to Ingrid, he is aware, if already acquired, of the Lord Vessel and knows your intentions. He mentions the four kings and their sunken slumber and the place where they reside. No mortal would survive without the help of Knight Artorius. He instructs the chosen undead to seek him out, therefore thinking that he is still alive. But his death was long ago, almost 300 years ago in the time of Ulasil's fall. When standing in the royal wood of the distant past, the undead burg and parish cannot be seen. They have yet to be built. Ulasil was confirmed to survive before fully succumbing to the abyss for another 100 years, and during this period, I believe the construction on the undead burg and parish began. For more context on this timeline, please check my An Undead Burg and Parish and Night King Rendell lore videos. The Burg is therefore between 200 and 300 years old. Without the Burg, there is no depths, and without the depths, there is no Blighttown, meaning that Blighttown was blighted within the last 200 years. This is supported.
Let me think about that. So Blighttown obviously still existed as part of the Great Swamp, but he's saying that the corruption of it kind of came from the sewers coming from Blighttown. So he might be right, or not Blighttown, obviously, but the Burg. I could see where he's going with that.
300 years old. Without the Burg, there is no depths, and without the depths, there is no Blighttown.
So I guess that also depends on if you want to ignore Anor Londo potentially contributing to the depths. So if that's the case, would I say that the Berg was built on top of a pre-existing depths. I don't know. I just need to think about that a bit more. Because when you do fight like the Gaping Dragon, there is a bunch of like the sludge coming off the wall of what I presume would be like Anor Londo. Because it doesn't really seem like it's coming from the Berg in that spot specifically. But yeah, the Berg itself also doesn't seem like it would be large enough to support that much like sludge going through it. So it kind of seems more like an Anor Londo thing to me. But I don't know if that really takes anything away from like his greater point here, perhaps.
Meaning that Blighttown was blighted within the last 200 years. This is supported by Salamon's encounter with Quelana, as he was presumably the first to visit the ancestral home of the Pyromancers, return and then tell of his adventures. So this also means that the tunnel leading out of Blighttown and into the Valley of the Drakes is also around 200 years old, as because of this entryway,
And that is a very different statement. Oh, maybe he'll talk about it more.
the key into New Londo can be acquired. Key to the iron bars separating the ruins of New Londo and Drake Valley. The ruins of New Londo.
Yeah, no, so I feel like that one isn't true. Like the blighting of Blighttown is a different thing than like these kind of ruins or like the actual places existing, perhaps, with the exception to maybe the Undead Berg and or the Depths.
Were blocked off, for the cursed ghosts pose danger to life and spirit, and the legends speak of a terrible dark which was sealed away. The remnants of the one responsible for storing this key is positioned nearby. Upon a corpse can be obtained the Crimson Set and the sorcery called Remedy. Sorcery of the red-robed Yulva, one of the sealers of New Londo, reduce bleeding and poison buildup and undo various poisonous effects. One of the New Londo's unique healing sorceries. Perhaps she abandoned her sealer duty to take her healing arts back to Blighttown. Yulva gave up her duties due to the suffering of her neighbours. How many people did she save? We will never know. But because of her efforts, we can confirm that the Berg was built after the fall of Ulasil. The Berg has existed for more than 200 years. Salamon visited Blighttown in the last 200 years before it was blighted. Engi was banned.
I'm still not on board with the idea of Salaman having to visit Koilana there. She could have potentially met him elsewhere, but that doesn't mean that it didn't happen either.
From the Great Swamp and followed in Salamon's footsteps. He came to Blighttown, where it was soon blighted, and Yulva abandoned her post to cure the inflicted. So that's the timeline of events understood, but how did Engi blight an already suffering town? Engi's creations are both toxic and poisonous. When trudging through the modern-day swamp, you are quickly poisoned. Poison mist is found discarded amongst a pile of a pyromancer's attire tucked and hidden beneath Blighttown's far wall. The description mentions Engi by name and his current occupation. Unique pyromancy crafted by Engi, considered a heretic even at the Great Swamp, create poison mist. Engi became an egg-bearing undead who serves a deformed young girl who speaks an unintelligible tongue. The egg-bearing undead positioned within Quelaag's domain do not possess any clothes, supporting the fan-favourite theory of the discarded pile once belonging to Engi. So, where is he? Engi's location is a secret. He and his fair lady are obscured by illusions of death. The fair lady is sick. She is dying from a disease known as blight pus. It is my belief that Engi was solely responsible for this disease. The people of Blighttown, abandoned by the light, felt the warmth and safety of those that came from chaos. The relationship between the daughters is as strong and sturdy as the scaffolding that scales the high walls.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with that, and I feel like what's going on with the Fair Lady is a completely different thing, because inside of her eggs is supposed to be like humanity or something along those lines. So I feel like he didn't blight her, but like whatever she had probably also affected him, and he may have like incidentally started to create the poison and toxic mists or something along those lines. Maybe he didn't even need to get infected first. It could have just been like him potentially trying to cleanse her. I don't really know. So curious about how you guys feel about that in chat.
For this disease, the people of Blighttown, abandoned by the light, felt the warmth and safety of those that came from chaos. The relationship between the daughters is as strong and sturdy as the scaffolding that scales the high walls. Inspecting the many planks, you will notice a white webbing. This, I believe, belongs to the daughters. They have helped the people of Blighttown, making their house a home. In return, they are worshipped and protected by the boulder-wielding barbarians. And
yeah, one thought that occurs to me with that is if Angie is responsible for blighting the Fair Lady, I couldn't imagine Quelaag just accepting that and not trying to delete Angie. You feel hatred for people whose kindness ends up hurting them, an unpopular opinion? Yeah, she's the egg layer, not Angie. Angie. So, Angie, technically. Or you could just call him Angie, because he's mean to us. What was I going to say? Yeah, so I think the other thing that's worth considering is when the Fair Lady would have like been transformed to be the Firekeeper, and or when she became like more encased in webs and stuff. I don't know. Eggy, so now he's like a Korean baby. That's a joke.
when the people fell ill due to a mysterious disease, it was only natural that they'd seek the aid of their fiery gods. But the poison came at a price. The fair lady removed the pus with the fangs of her bottom form. Similar to a spider draining its prey, the people were cleansed and in return accepted to be hosts for new life. This new life would take a similar shape to the sisters, and in the beginning it appears to have worked. At the base of Blighttown, on the sandy bars and wooden ramps, are dozens of fire-breathing, arthropod-like creatures featuring small yet usable wings. They are a mixture of man and beast, who I believe are the product of the sisters' efforts. However, as more of the people were cured, the pus began to poison the protector. Slowly over time, her skin went pale, her hair greyed, and her eyes glazed white. Her state formed the fury of her sister, who began to capture and kill any who entered so that their humanity might be acquired.
It's also possible that the Fair Lady was always blind as a byproduct of being a firekeeper. Just to throw that one out there. Especially with like the line in DS3 about how all the firekeepers lost their sight or something along those lines. Which I think Shanalot would obviously be an exception to, because she's not a real firekeeper. Although I guess you could probably make the argument that the Fair Lady shouldn't be a true firekeeper either. I don't know.
Through humanity, her suffering is sated, and eventually her condition is cured. But for the chosen undead to heal her, they must first defeat her sister Quelaag. When slain, her soul is absorbed, and because of the Fair Lady's condition, she mistakenly senses you as her sister.
So I would also disagree, because I'm pretty confident the Fair Lady's condition never actually gets cured, even with humanity, especially when you see her corpse in Dark Souls 3.
Condition is cured, but for the chosen undead to heal her, they must first defeat her sister Quelaag. When slain, her soul is absorbed, and because of the Fair Lady's condition, she mistakenly senses you as her sister.
Oh, my dear.
And that one I'm not so sure about. I feel like she might just think you're the sister because you're able to commune with her by virtue of having the old witch ring. Although having the idea of like having Quelaag's soul is kind of cool and I like it. You think she's too far gone to be cured. Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Dear sister, don't mind me. It does not hurt terribly. I'll be fine. I have you, dear sister. But promise me that you will take care of yourself. Quayla, please, sister, do not cry. I am happy, really. I have you, don't I?
Again, she mistakens you for her sister. Those tears are not Quaylag's, they are yours. Something similarly saddening is the loss of a dear friend. For our final look at the known pyromancers, we return to Laurentius. When rescued, the only form of repayment that Laurentius can offer is the sharing of his flame, but he is quick to query whether you find the magics unsavoury. If answering yes, he is disappointed, but understands. If answering no, he immediately becomes excited and is eager to get started.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm sure that they'll be of some use, some assistance. Here, first take this. A flame from the Great Swamp. Now you're a fully fledged pyromancer. Why, let's get started right now. Pyromancy is the art of casting fire. Produce flame, then channel it, just as our ancestors did. A pyromancer must be in tune with nature herself. My home, the Great Swamp, is an abundant store of nature. You will understand one day. It only takes time.
Pyromancy depends, and in ways is dictated by its surroundings. When becoming in tune with something, you are matching its energy and frequency. The Great Swamp does have its perils, but it is also a calm and quiet environment. Izalith, however, is the polar opposite. The city is situated within the bowels of the earth. The lava-filled veins crack and seep at the seams. This side...
Obviously, there's been like a video, I think by like Zoli recently, where they talk about that Izalith was a swamp, a very, very large swamp beforehand. So I feel like this is a bit more of a retrospective lens on Izalith itself, in that it very well could have been a swamp to begin with. And for what it's worth, I did look up like the whole architecture thing of Java, and they were built, not necessarily carved out of stone. So Eredin might be right that Izalith could have been carved out of stone, but at least like its kind of reference material wasn't, and it was actually constructed.
Seismic system would no doubt cause many eruptions and violent reactions. Chaos, to put it simply. It is no wonder then that the pyromancies that were developed within this region reflect this ferocious frequency. Pyromancy being an outcome of its surroundings is also supported within the DLC. A pyromancy discovered from the dark of the abyss by a pyromancer who wandered Ulasil. Conjure a great black flame in one's palm. Black flames are weighty and inflict physical damage, enough to smack away the mightiest of shields. It would appear that Salomon was not the first adventure to Lordran. This unknown pyromancer did not return and perished within the chasm of the abyss. Black flame is the dark equivalent of great combustion. Could this deceased shaman have been a denizen of the Great Swamp? You can decide. Pyromancy, as previously discussed.
Yeah, so I think the way you would need to reconcile this pyromancer being an Ulasil is that they may have also been dragged into the past, similarly to the Chosen Undead or Marvelous Chester, because the 300-year timeline should predate Solomon, who should have been the first pyromancer of a man, because Quaylana is the mother of pyromancy, canonically speaking. So either the timeline is messed up, time is convoluted, or this dude got sent back. I don't know.
You can decide. Pyromancy, as previously discussed, is the evolution of flame sorcery. The sorcery of Venheim is visually different, but is still the manipulation of the soul, only that this manipulation comes from the mind.
I wish he showed where these quotes were coming from, because these ones seemed like interviews when he's had like this kind of like background images going on with them, and just so I could like look them up directly. I mean, obviously I could take the text, but it would just be nice to have like the source with it.
Only that this manipulation comes from the mind. Pyromancy is the soul. By becoming more in tune and gaining an understanding of oneself, you can draw upon your own strength and hold it in your hands. The size of a soul dictates its power. The Witch of Izalith was one of 4 to discover the strength to become Lord. Using her source, she sought to create something new. Her ritual was successful, and since the birth of chaos, the children of Izalith have shared in its potential.
In this land, pyromancers earn a certain respect. The Witch of Izalith, one of the legendary lords, is the godmother of pyromancy. So the day I became undead, I was ecstatic. I felt as if I'd been chosen to attune myself to the ancient arts. Of course, it wasn't all that romantic in the end.
The circumstances surrounding Laurentius's discovery of his undeath is a discussion relating to the manufacturing of the undead, and so that is a topic for another day. However, his undeath did not remove his potential, it increased it. As long as he held purpose, no matter what would become of him during his journey, he could still continue and carry out his quest for knowledge. But some knowledge is better left unknown. When acquiring one of Quailana's pyromancies and then returning to Laurentius, he has this to say.
What spectacular pyromancy? Tell me about it. I have never seen anything like it. Why, yes, of course. Thank you for sharing. I'm still an able pyromancer. I shall locate her myself. I'm in your debt once again.
Soon after, he leaves, never to return. Unlike his first attempt, he safely makes it down to the base of Blighttown. It was not the poison of the swamp that killed him, it was his desperation and desire. Aimlessly wandering the swamp, looking for a woman who did not see his potential, caused his flame to fade and eventually die. To conclude, pyromancers, ancestors of those who first learned to unlock the potential of man's greatest tool, are mocked in modern times. They are misunderstood, cast out of civilization, left to live amongst the beasts of the wild. In their remote seclusion, they live in harmony, tapping into the frequency of Mother Nature herself. They worship the warmth of their mother and pass on the teachings of her daughter. Their legacy lives on within the bosom of brothers and sisters who share in their adoration of fire. They are kind, caring people whose company is one of comfort and safety. Thank you for watching. Some additional insights that are worth noting are: the iron flesh pyromancy does not look like iron at all. Iron does not glow blue when heated, and neither does the temperature of the flame that is required to smelt it. The shapes seen on the image of the pyromancy also do not resemble ingots. Personally, they take the appearance similar to crystals, and as crystals and sorcery have a close relationship, that too strengthens the bond on my Venheim theory. Lastly is the outland pyromancy called Acid Surge. This pyromancy corrodes weapons and armor, but did not originate within the Great Swamp, so whoever created this spell must have had a neighbouring kingdom whose arsenal they had to be wary of. The fact that this is found within Lordran indicates that the birthplace of pyromancy is known all over the world. So, did this knowledge travel with those that followed the unknown daughter of chaos? When the pyromancers were removed from Venheim, did some seek to separate and find their own residence out in the world? A special shout out to my patrons and channel members for keeping my flame lit and my Estus filled. If you wish to support the channel, you will find the appropriate links within the pinned comment. So, That's all for now. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
So yeah, that was another good video. I do wish he would have gone into the topics of yearning and warmth and ambition and all that kind of stuff that goes along with, what's it called? With pyromancy. Because I do think it's really integral to kind of understanding part of the larger mythos of Dark Souls, that fire represents something that's integral to life, and as Laurentius says, trying to reach out and touch it is something that you can't do, but those who become obsessed with fire will eventually learn to do it anyway, which is kind of really unexpected because you're not supposed to be able to touch it. Like when you look at the Witch of Izalith's hands, they're burned based off of her own fixation on attaining more fire for herself. And he had it in the thumbnail that it was like kind of her ambition which caused her downfall, but I thought he was going to go into that more, especially with like Koilana's dialogue about the witch's sin and kind of needing that 1,000-year punishment being a bit excessive. So nonetheless, everything else I think was fairly grounded. I'm not sold on the Vinheim stuff or like the Eingi like poisoning the Fair Maiden, but a lot of these other observations I think were actually really good. So gonna go ahead and paste that into the chat if you guys want to give him a like as well. So I actually didn't take as much time to go through these videos as I was expecting. So let's see if we can stretch out the stream a bit more. Maybe we should do Yoshimitsu's theory about Seath the Scaleless and the identity, of his daughter. Because that's been something I've been meaning to share with you guys. Let me put that one up here. Scaleezy says, you still think that the Pyromancy Flame should scale with levels instead of souls, which is what Dark uses? So, instead of in faith, which is what Dark uses. Yeah, so in Dark Souls 1, Pyromancy's scaled with the Pyromancy Flame, which inadvertently scaled off of souls, which kind of makes sense because you would upgrade it with souls. But yeah, that would have been a nice way to continue going on with the games. But I think the devs realized that when you look at an SL1 run where people were just kind of cheesing the hell out of the Pyromancy class, that they felt it might have needed more statistical requirements to keep on going. So, okay, yeah. That was a good video by Eredin. Next, we'll transition into Channel Yoshimitsu's lore video of Seath the Scaleless and identity of his daughter. So for those who might not know Yoshimitsu, he also speaks Japanese and delves into a lot of Dark Souls lore. And so these are pretty heavy videos in terms of like how densely they are packed with information here. So just be prepared. Alright, here we go. Seath the Scaleless and the identity of his daughter. Okay. Yeah, his videos are also always super quiet for me. This is literally as high as I can turn it up. So I'm going to turn down my mic volume here, so that way if you guys turn up your audio, I'm not just going to like destroy your ears.
What the original Japanese states as fact.
Yeah, one of my early videos is definitely like that. Alright, I'm going to restart the video here. So, obviously this volume is low. I can't boost it up anymore, so just let me know how it is for you guys after I start it.
Hello everyone, my name is Yoshimitsu, and welcome to the Japanese lore of Dark Souls. As the title implies, I will be referring to the original Japanese text over the translated English text. If there's any discrepancies between the versions, I will always take what the original Japanese states as fact. I take this approach as many lore elements have been lost due to translation, and I'm hoping that I can bring some answers to long debated and unanswered lore questions, and bring some new theories of mine as well. Let's begin. In this video, I will be talking about the infamous ancient dragon, Seath the Scaleless. To start, I will begin with the dragon weapon of Seath. The Moonlight Greatsword reads, "This sword, one of the rare dragon weapons, came from the tale of Seath the Scaleless, the pale white dragon who betrayed his own. Seath is the grandfather of sorcery, and the sword is imbued with his magic, which shall be unleashed as a wave of moonlight." The term grandfather of sorcery is Majutsu no Sotaru Shisu. Majutsu translates to sorcery or magic. Now the kanji so can translate as grandfather, but it really translates as the originator, pioneer, founder, ancestor, etc. This kanji so is also used to describe Gilia, the father of hexing. And this kanji so is also used to describe Quilana of Izalith, mother of pyromancy.
Yeah, I kind of forgot that Seath was the legitimate founder of sorcery. I just thought it was something that was taken for granted, so I might need to amend some things on my Mira board. It's all good.
To describe Quilana of Izalith, mother of pyromancy. The grandfather of sorcery, father of hexing, mother of pyromancy, all use the same kanji, so, and all three really should be translated as the originator, pioneer, or the founder. Seath is also the only ancient dragon without scales. The Dark Moon Knight states this regarding Seath. At the Regal Archives, he immersed himself in research on scales of immortality, the one thing he did not have, but his very research drove him mad. Throughout his research, Seath committed countless number of experiments. The channelers were the ones who helped him with these experiments. The six-side helm of the channeler reads, "Helm of the channelers, sorcerers that serve Seath the Scaleless. The 6 eyes arranged in 2 vertical columns compensate for Seath's lack of sight." And these channelers are the ones who found the specimens for the experiments. The robe of the channeler reads, "Robe of the channelers, sorcerers that serve Seath the Scaleless. Even after the onset of Seath's madness, the Snatchers, as they were often called, ventured to far lands to find suitable human specimens, the heaviest of protective gear for sorcerers and imbued with magic." These channelers are actually not channelers. They're called Dendosha in Japanese. Dendosha translates to evangelist, and the robes they wear are sei, which translate to holy robes. These sorcerers who served Seath are actually evangelists who wore holy robes. Now, the humans.
Yeah, I didn't know that, and that kind of makes a lot of sense with Seath being allied to Gwyn there.
Specimens these evangelists kidnapped were experimented upon. The Archive Tower cell key reads, "Key to the cell of the Duke's Archive Tower." The Archive Tower, once a trove of precious tomes and letters, became a prison after the onset of Seath's madness. The Serpent Men who guard the prison know not the value of what they hide. In the basement of the tower are the writhing mistakes of the terrifying experiments which were conducted there. And the Archive Tower giant cell key reads, "Key to the giant cell below the Duke's Archive Tower. The giant cell once imprisoned countless maidens, but is now empty, save for a few key persons. They struggle to uphold their sanity, as the horde of mistakes writhe at a fearful close proximity." Now the term mistakes comes from otoshigo. Otoshigo can translate to spawn, as it is used to describe the star spawn of Cthulhu, the formless spawn, the spawn of the Green Abyss, and etc.
And this is the set of characters which is used for Estelle, the natural born of the void, which is why I typically say that I would prefer to have called him something like Estelle, spawn of darkness.
The two in a corner have retained their humanity, as they do not attack the player, and instead can be found crying. Once these two are killed, they drop the miracles Soothing Sunlight and Bountiful Sunlight. Bountiful Sunlight reads, "Special miracle granted to the maidens of Guinevere, Princess of the Sun. Soothing Sunlight also has the same description. Based off the key descriptions and the miracles dropping from the Otoshigo, I do assume these Otoshigo, or spawns, are former maidens who were kidnapped and experimented upon.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The Moonlight Butterflies are also experiments of Seath. The Moonlight Butterfly soul reads, Soul of the mystical moonlight butterfly which flitters in the dark root garden. Special beings have special souls. The butterfly's soul is a creation of Seath the Scaleless. The Moonlight Butterfly soul can be used to ascend shields to the Crystal Ring Shield, and it reads, Weapon born from the mystical creature of the dark root garden, the Moonlight Butterfly. Imbued with a powerful crystal power, like the butterfly created by Seath the Scaleless, can emit crystal light rings. Its weapon art is referred to as Kessho no Kori, crystal light rings. These light rings look very similar to the miracle, Way of the White Corona. The Way of the White Corona miracle reads, A lost Way of White miracle launches a white discus which slices into foes and returns to its conjurer. Long ago, when the imprints left by the gods were still deep, miracles of the Way of White existed alongside Orioles. Those who yearned for the long-lost Orioles fully believed that they would return one day. The white discus are called Shiroi Kori, white light rings, and this is the same naming format as the crystal light rings, Kessho no Kori. Now if you give the Moonlight Butterfly soul to Frampt, he will give more souls than what the soul itself is worth. This hints the Moonlight Butterfly is female, as Frampt offers a higher number of souls for anything that is female or female related. The Moonlight
Interesting. I wonder like how that stacks up with like Seath's other stuff here.
higher number of souls for anything that is female or female related. The Moonlight Butterflies were maidens who used the Way of White Corona miracle, captured and experimented upon by Seath. Based on the white light rings turning into crystal light rings, the maidens were likely imbued with crystal.
I mean, that would kind of make sense based off the nature of Seath's research. So I definitely follow where he's going with this so far. I still have a few reservations.
Now the influence of Seath in experiments reached beyond Lordran. In Drang Lake, an area known as Brightstone Cove Tseldora,
I'm actually really glad he's bringing this up, just because it's something that you can't really get from the English script. But I think what they were trying to say in like Dark Souls 2, the remnants of life gems are essentially what's talked about in like the Brightstone Cove. So life gems come from here, come from crystals.
shows Seath's influences as well. Brightstone Cove Tseldora is Kisekimachi Jerudora. Kiseki is pyroxene, and therefore Tseldora should be the city of pyroxene, Jeldora. Not too sure why the name was changed from Jeldora to Tseldora. Anyways, Tseldora flourished by mining the pyroxene.
I wonder if there's also meant to be a little bit of a play on words here. Not like literally, just... I don't really think it, but whenever I do notice like the kind of homophones, so like Kiseki could also be miracle. So is it like Miracle Tseldora? I don't necessarily think that, like, or Miracle Ward Tseldora.
Tseldora flourished by mining the pyroxene. Tseldora robe reads, robe worn by the settlers of Tseldora. Rather fancy, but with low defense and unfit for battle. The bright stone that brought prosperity to Tseldora served to stoke the flames of its people's desires, eventually leading to its ruin. Those bewitching, brilliantly gleaming stones are said to be fragments of a being that once roamed the entrails of the earth. And the Duke of Tseldora had a strong fascination with spiders. The Brightstone key reads, key used in the Brightstone Cove Tseldora. The eccentric Lord Seldora, known for his fascination with spiders, built a town and a personal fortune by mining brightstone. One day, the town was overrun, but Lord Seldora only stood by and watched eerily contented. And the spider the Duke most prized was Freya. The soul of Duke's dear Freya reads, Soul of Duke's dear Freya, the Writhing Ruin's keeper. The Writhing Ruin is an ancient thing whose shadow remains cast over the land. It first took possession of a solitary insect, but grew its power, feasting on the wealth of twisted souls found in the land. The Writhing Ruin is Haumushi. Hau translates as to crawl, and mushi translates to insect. The Writhing Ruin should be translated as the crawling insect.
Also, the interesting thing about this version of Mushi is rather than like using the one character for it, it uses the three, which, if I remember correctly, is just kind of supposed to represent like a multiplicity of insects. But yeah.
Duke Seldora's dear Freya was the keeper of the crawling insect. So who or what is this crawling insect? Shanalot states, Seek those whose names are unutterable, the four endowed with immense souls. The four great souls are 1. The old witch soul, held by the lost sinner. 1. The old king soul, held by the old Iron King. 1. The old dead one soul, held by the rotten. And 1. The old pale drake soul. But the pale drake soul is not held by Freya.
And just to tie into that, those are items only attained from New Game Plus or using the bonfire aesthetics. So it's a little bit I don't want to say like hidden, but not that straightforward. You want canon? Aldia feels like a Seath incarnation, but Seath soul's in Frasia's hands, so you're not so sure. Yeah, I don't get the Seath vibe from Aldia, because while they're looking at similar things, Aldia is trying to overcome the curse, whereas Seath wants immortality specifically, which I mean is kind of incidental to defeating the undead curse, because if you beat it, you could become immortal, but slightly different.
This gray soul is held by the small glowing dot, and this glowing red dot is the Haumushi, the crawling insect, and this crawling insect is one of the four great souls. The old pale drake soul is Furuki Hakuryu no Soul. Furuki translates to old or ancient. Hakuryu translates to white dragon. The old pale drake soul should be the old white dragon soul.
Yes, in a very literal sense, it might not make the best for localization there. I'm trying to remember if in DS1, or is this from DS1, they might have called him the Pale Drake in Dark Souls 1, so they might have just felt like their hands were a bit tied in the naming conventions, but I don't remember for sure, so I could be wrong about that.
And this old white dragon soul can be transposed by weaponsmith Ornifex into the Moonlight Greatsword, the dragon weapon associated with Seath, the white dragon. Shalkwar, the cat, states this regarding the writhing ruin, or the crawling insect. Oh, it's that awful traitor long ago. He coveted what he did not have, and it drove him mad. What a curious conundrum. The writhing ruin keeps searching as we speak, searching for its heart's desire. The writhing ruin that Shalkwar is speaking about is Haumushi, crawling insect. Shalkwar is talking about the crawling insect that holds Seath's great soul. Based on...
Was that, actual English? Or is this... Okay, yeah. That's just kind of what happens sometimes in Dark Souls 2. So yeah, no, Yoshimitsu is definitely correct here. I forgot that she doesn't call him like that. So yeah, the writhing ruin is what he's talking about.
Speaking about is Haumushi, crawling insect. Shalkwar is talking about the crawling insect that holds Seath's great soul. Based on all the information that I've been covering, I will make the assumption this Haumushi, or crawling insect, is Seath himself. Seath is also an ancient dragon who betrayed his own. The opening states, "And Seath the Scaleless betrayed his own, and the dragons were no more." This statement in Japanese actually states the dragons were finally defeated.
Yeah, this has been one of the most unfortunate localizations just because it's on like the very beginning intro. And to say that the dragons were no more means like, yo, they all got nixed. But this is a little bit more vague. Like defeated could imply this if they actually went with it, obviously. But if you get defeated in battle, that doesn't necessarily mean like all of your soldiers were killed. It just means like you lost, you retreated. And that could give more room to explain why there's like the ancient dragon in Ash Lake, or how Midir could have been an ancient dragon, or Calamite. I guess Midir is technically a descendant, but Calamite is canonically an ancient dragon. You thought it was for extra dramatization? Very well. I mean, that's a good way to kind of deal with some of these inconsistencies, if that's what we want to call it. It sounds way cooler than they were defeated, yeah.
Not the dragons were no more. When Seath betrayed the dragons, he was awarded dukedom. The bequeathed Lord Soul Shard for Seath reads, "Seath allied with Lord Gwyn and turned upon the dragons, and for this he was awarded dukedom, embraced by the royalty and given a fragment of a great soul. Although just a piece, it will still satiate the Lord Vessel." Here, something very critical to the lore is lost in this translation. The portion where it states, "He was awarded..."
Yeah, and this is the part where you guys are going to really need to pay attention, because this is kind of going to be central to understanding Seath's role in the royal family, as well as his status as like the Duke and what exactly that means, especially when we begin looking at what I'm going to assume Yoshimitsu is going to talk about later with the family tree.
Lore is lost in this translation. The portion where it states, "He was awarded dukedom, embraced by the royalty" is "Nochi ni koushaku toshite ou no gaiseki to natta toki" in Japanese. It states Seath became a gaiseki to the king. Gaiseki is a word that describes the mother of the king, or describes the queen's side of the royal family, something similar to a consort kin. And the only way for Seath to become a gaiseki is for him to have a daughter, and this daughter to marry the king and become his queen.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to elaborate on there if he didn't say that there. So just to reiterate, Seath became a duke by virtue of his daughter being married to the queen, is kind of what this is implying here. Yeah. So he's the queen mother father.
In this situation, the king likely points to Gwyn. There really isn't any other way to interpret this. Seath definitely had a daughter.
And part of the issue with this is Gaiseki is kind of a weird term to try and translate from English to Japanese, because this is literally two characters in Japanese, and if you don't pay too much attention to them, you could look at this character for outer and then this character for like relative to just mean like, oh, somebody like not directly related to the family, but it actually has connotations of what Yoshimitsu just pointed out here. I guess I shouldn't say connotations, like technically, as far as the dictionary goes, its only meaning is that it means that they are related to the queen consort. And what I mean by queen consort doesn't necessarily mean like the wife of the king in the sense of like the legal framework marriage. It could be a concubine, where it could be a wife to the queen, or sorry, like a consort to the king that isn't technically like first in line, as far as I know. I might be a little bit mistaken on that, because I mean, why the hell should I know all this stuff? It's painful. Yeah. So dukedom shows that Seath has a very high position in the royal family, but not necessarily like a blood relation stemming from the king. So they're like an outer relative in that sense. So it does kind of make sense in like a broader perspective, but like I was just saying, this specifically is related to the queen side of the family. So the royal family was screwing dragons since Gwyn, huh? Kind of. So I think Yoshimitsu will kind of come to the same conclusion as I did as to like what this ultimately means. The first time that I was that this whole Gaiseki thing was brought to my attention was actually by Yoshimitsu. So when I did make my not so clickbaity video about like Gwyn's father, I was kind of referencing it being Seath, because if Seath is like the father of Gwyn's wife, that makes Seath Gwyn's potential stepfather. So enjoy that one.
There really isn't any other way to interpret this. Seath definitely had a daughter. Priscilla and Shira are the two that immediately come to mind as possible candidates as daughters of Seath.
Alright, yeah, and I also screwed up because I did meant to say that, like, even though this does technically mean that it comes from like the queen side of the family, it might be a little bit more disambiguated, or maybe somebody could have gotten confused on like its literal meaning, or well, its dictionary meaning, and then just took it a bit more literally. So that is kind of one of the puzzle pieces we need to fit back together in trying to decipher what the actual lore implications of this specific terminology means. But either way, I'll just let him talk about the video now.
Had a daughter. Priscilla and Shira are the two that immediately come to mind as possible candidates as daughters of Seath. But I believe neither are the daughter that married Gwyn. I will begin with Shira. Shira is a knight of Princess Filianor who resides in the Ringed City. She is also one of the few female knights from the Age of Gods. Lightning Arrow reads, "The few female knights who serve in the Age of the Gods use this miracle for dragon slaying. Draw a lightning bow to fire a lightning arrow. The lightning arrows offer a great improvement to the range of the spears, and were said to have been used to pierce the eyes of the dragons from afar. But remember, beautiful stories are always marked by embellishment." Shira's armor also confirms she is a descendant of royalty. Shira's armor reads, "Armor of Shira, knight in service to Filianor, a rare woman's piece from ancient times. With a spun gold shawl draped over the silver breastplate and a green woven skirt, this armor offers a subdued yet refined elegance. Apropos to both a handmaiden of the princess and one whose veins course with royal blood. This royal blood is likely that of Gwyn's." When Shira invades, she states, "I've searched for thee, dark-stricken creature. I am Shira, daughter of the Duke, descendant of the gods, and trusted friend to Midir." In Japanese, she states she is Kami no Sue. Kami translates to God, Sue translates to descendant. She is the descendant of God. And in the world of Dark Souls, Kami, or God, is Gwyn. In Japanese,
To be fair, there are other gods worth considering, and even if she's like descendant of Gwyn, that could still like fit. But I think technically Izalith could be considered a god, but I don't really think there's much reason to doubt her eventual lineage to the Gwyn royal family tree there.
Shira is stating she is the descendant of God, then states she is the daughter of the Duke. As Seath is a duke, this hints at the possibility that Shira is the daughter of Duke Seath. Her crown also has a connection with Seath. Shira's crown reads, "Crown of Shira, knight in service to Filianor, finely crafted with silver and fashioned with a pearl from a man-eater shell." Man-eater shells can be found in the Crystal Caves, which is the domain of Seath. This hints at a connection between Seath and Shira, but I believe this is an intentional misdirection by From Software.
I wonder if he's going to go the direction I'm thinking of right now. I kind of want to just type it off screen and then show it off, like if I get it right. Let me think. Let's do this right now. Pull off one of these. Alright, I've got it typed in, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'll show you, and we could all laugh. And if I'm right, I get to pat myself on the back.
You see, I believe Shira is the daughter of Sir Arstor of Karam.
Kareem!
So I'll explain. The Shotel reads, curved sword with sharply curved blade.
Oh, I shouldn't have done it like that. Yeah, so yeah. Duke Arstor of Kareem, I think, could be another potential relation. I do understand why a lot of people would come to the conclusion that it should have been Seath that Shira is related to, but for what it's worth, I'm assuming he's probably going to get into it, but maybe if he doesn't, I'll just talk about it anyway. That Duke Arstor of Kareem was known for making purging stones and things like that, which you can get from the Man-Eater shells in Dark Souls 1. The Man-Eater shells also show up in Ash Lake, so it's not as though they're exclusive to the Seath area. But anyway, I get to pat myself on the back now.
Created by Arstor, Earl of Karam, requires great skill to wield, but evades shield defenses to sneak in damage.
Oh, okay, yeah, he'll just talk about it.
Earl of Karam in Japanese is Karimu Haku Arusta. The Haku is from Hakushaku, which translates to Earl. However, Sir Arstor's title does not stay the same with the bite ring descriptions. The Curse Bite Ring reads, one of the infamous bite rings commissioned by Sir Arstor of Karam. Despite the dreadful rumors surrounding its creation, this ring is an unmistakable asset in its ability to help prevent curses. Sir Karam of Arstor in Japanese reads as Karimu ko Arusta. The ko indicates Arstor is a koshaku, a duke, not an earl. And the same applies for Arstor's spear. He is not Earl Arstor the Impaler. He is Duke Arstor the Impaler. Based on the descriptions, Sir Arstor was an earl when he created the Shotel. And when Sir Arstor had the bite rings commissioned, he was a duke. And Duke Arstor and Shira have an interesting connection, and that connection is the Man-Eater shells. When you kill the Man-Eater shells, they drop the purging stones. The purging stone reads, ash-colored stone encasing a skull, secret treasure of Arstor, the Earl of Karam, reduces curse buildup and breaks curse. Humans are helpless against curses and can only redirect their influence. The purging stone does not dispel curses, but receives them as a surrogate. The stone itself was once a person or some other being. The purging monument found in the Ring City, like the purging stone, can also cure curses. The abundance of human skulls can be observed with the purging monument. I will make the assumption at this point the material used to create the purging stone and the purging monument are from the same source. And the crown of Shira states that it also has a pearl from a man-eater shell. When you look at the corpse of a man-eater shell, the pearls are not pearls, they're human skulls. This would indicate the pearl on Shira's crown is also made from a human skull. And purging stones, a secret treasure of Duke Arstor, drop from these man-eater shells. You see, I am of the theory that Shira, Knight of Filianor, is the daughter of Duke Arstor of Karam, not the daughter of Duke Seath. Next, Priscilla is a crossbreed who resides in the painted world of Ariamis. Her title...
So I do think it might be more likely for Priscilla to actually be the wife of Gwyn or former wife of Gwyn, and he could have had multiple spouses or consorts or whatever you want to call them throughout his reign. So I'm curious as to see why Yoshimitsu would disagree with this, and or whom he would choose as a candidate to have been Gwyn's wife instead.
In Japanese is Junpaku no Hanryu. Junpaku translates to pure white. Hanryu translates to half-dragon. Defeating her gives the achievement, Defeat Crossbreed Priscilla. The same achievement in Japanese is Kami no Gekha, Hanryu Purishira. Kami translates to God, Gikha translates to defeat.
Interesting. Okay, I didn't know that about the trophy. Yeah, that could have definitely changed my opinion. So if she is half god, then it would seem less likely that she would wed Gwyn because she would be a child of Gwyn. So, hey guys, new lore that Yoshimitsu just talked about like however many months ago. 1 year ago. New lore that's a year and a half old. Oh man, he doesn't have a ton of views on this. We need to pump those numbers up.
The Japanese achievement outright confirms Priscilla is a god. Therefore, Priscilla the crossbreed is half dragon and half god. And Priscilla is also a bastard child. Priscilla's soul states, "Soul of Priscilla the crossbreed, trapped inside the painted world of Ariamis. Special beings have special souls. Use the soul of this crossbreed bastard child and antithesis to all life to acquire a huge amount of souls, or to create a unique weapon." Bastard child indicates Priscilla.
Yeah, so Scaleless asks, she's a 10-foot tall dragon lady with a fluffy tail. What else would she be? So I honestly thought that she would have been half human, half dragon, and she could have been an experiment created by Seath similar to the Pisakas. So I just was not operating on the assumption that she was a half divine there.
Was born between parents not married to each other. In Japanese, the term bastard child is translated from fuginoko. Fuginoko is a term used for illegitimate children. Priscilla is an illegitimate bastard child born between a dragon and a god. Now the dragon parent is often thought to be Seath the Scaleless. But Priscilla is the Junpaku no Handyu, the pure white half-dragon. Seath is the Hakuryu, the white dragon. The power Seath wields is the power of the moonlight. Priscilla wields the power of Life Hunt. And visually speaking, Priscilla also looks like she has fur instead of being scaleless. I do not believe Seath is the parent of Priscilla.
I did not expect that.
The theory I have is Priscilla, the stark white dragon and god crossbreed, is the daughter of Elvina, the white cat.
I'm gonna big disagree on that, and part of the reason why I do think Priscilla should be related to Seath is because she does say pure white half dragon here, and with Seath being the actual white dragon, I would assume he'd be the full one, but maybe him just saying like Junpaku is supposed to be different from just Haku. I don't know. Yeah, so I'm curious where he's gonna go with the Elvina thing. That's a Shyamalan style twist. It is, yeah. That's definitely not what I'm expecting. And I do think Priscilla has a lot of actual ties into Moonlight with her connection to Gwendolyn, which I'll talk about if he doesn't get into it in this video. Yeah. Cats are dragons confirmed? Well, they are kind of an anomaly, aren't they? Oh, yeah. And then Jay Moore, you had an interesting question. Does God in Dark Souls mean the same as God in Elden Ring, a la a relation to Gwyn or Marika? I don't know specifically, because I do believe that the Witch of Izalith may have also been considered a god, but generally speaking, the gods are considered like the beings of fire. So potentially, yes, they could link into to Gwyn specifically, but it does get a bit more iffy the further away you get from Gwyn, because Guinevere left Gwyn to have children with Flan, and those are said to be called like noble children or heavenly children somewhere in the Japanese text, in like Dark Souls 3 specifically. And then over time, that kind of heavenly child motif could have extended all the way down to Henri of Astora. And so we might need to wed Henri to symbolize the usurpation of power from Anor Londo into the Lord of Londor in the kind of Dark Lord Hollow ending. But that's all kind of nebulous and kind of goes back to like the comparison that I often make of Built on like a House of Cards, where it definitely has a lot of structure, but I think the foundations are kind of shaky there. No wonder Shalqua is immortal. The four lords definitely qualify as gods. The rest seem to be lowercase g gods. I don't know if I would say like the what are the dudes? The dudes in the abyss. The four kings. I would not call them gods because they're like men, but yeah. Sordier says the silver cat ring could potentially be connected to the silver serpent ring. Both silver with blue eyes, and serpents are incomplete dragons. So, yeah, I'm definitely not on board with the cat theory yet. Because either the cat is divine or the cat is a dragon. And I don't think we have enough to connect cats to dragons yet. But maybe Yoshimitsu has this kind of a bulletproof plan to convince all of us.
Scaleless. I do not believe Seath is the parent of Priscilla. The theory I have is Priscilla, the stark white dragon and god crossbreed, is the daughter of Alvina, the white cat. So I'll explain my theory. Cats are a type of dragon.
Just such a
I'll refer to
David.
Shalquar, another cat that can be found in the small hut in Majula. Sweet Shalquar states, "Oh, it's like that awful traitor long ago. He coveted what he did not have, and it drove him mad. What a curious conundrum. The writhing ruin keeps searching as we speak, searching for its heart's desire." The writhing ruin is the haumushi, the crawling insect which I've explained earlier is Seath. Sweet Shalquar is directly calling Seath a traitor, and in Japanese this is even more clear. Shalquar directly calls Seath an uragirimono, a traitor. Others who refer to Seath do not call him directly a traitor. Logan states, "Furui ryū tachi wo uragitte." He turned against the ancient dragons. The Dark Moon Knight also says, "Koryu no uragirimono da." He turned against the ancient dragons. Shalquar considers Seath a traitor, not a traitor of the ancient dragons. This indicates Shalquar is on the side of the ancient dragons. And cats are ancient.
I feel like that is a very big leap and a very selective reading of the text here. Like, based on the intro cutscene of Dark Souls 1, it talks about how Seath betrayed the dragons. So I don't think it's fair here, but I mean, I'm going to let him continue. I'm just like very skeptical of this right here because, yeah, I'm just not on board with that.
Of the ancient dragons. And cats are ancient. The Cat Covenant ring reads, "Ring granted to those bound by the Forest Hunter Covenant. Answer Alvina's summoning. The white cat Alvina speaks a human tongue and has lived since the early age of fire. Alvina was a trusted friend of Knight Artorias in the Great Wolf Sith." And as I've mentioned earlier, Priscilla is known as the Junpaku no Handyu, the pure white half-dragon. And this term Junpaku is used in one other item description, and that is the Ring of Fog, given by Alvina the White Cat. The Ring of Fog reads, "Those who befriend Alvina are given this mysterious ring. It resembles a pearl with its robust pure white fog. The ring camouflages its wearer's presence, helping to prevent detection." The term robust pure white fog.
Okay, I think I get where he's going with this. I still am not on board.
Is Junpaku no Koikiri in Japanese. And Priscilla is the Junpaku no Handyu, the pure white half-dragon.
So just to get ahead, I think he's going to say because of the way that Priscilla disappears, that could connect it to the Ring of Fog idea here.
And if you attack Priscilla, she disappears and goes invisible. If you attack Alvina, she also disappears. Priscilla, the stark white dragon and god crossbreed, is the daughter of Alvina, the white cat. But if Shira and Priscilla are not the daughter of Seath, this still leaves the question of who the daughter of Seath is. And I believe the individual who is Seath's daughter is Rosaria, mother of Rebirth. Rosaria is in a secret room within the Cathedral of the Deep and is the covenant leader of Rosaria's fingers. Her soul transposes into the miracle Bountiful Sunlight. Bountiful Sunlight reads, "Special miracle granted to the maidens of Guinevere, Princess of the Sun. Gradual hit point restoration for self and vicinity." Now the fact Rosaria's soul transposes into Bountiful Sunlight confirms Rosaria is either a descendant or maiden of Guinevere. And Rosaria's soul is the only one that can be transposed into one item. Every other soul can be transposed into a minimum of 2 different items. And this is where Leonhard and his Crescent Moon Sword come in. The Crescent Moon Sword reads, "Leonhard set out on a journey of rebirth, but decided instead to serve the goddess as a knight and inherited this weapon." The Japanese description is much more direct in stating Leonhard inherited this weapon after he chose to serve Rosaria as a knight.
I strongly disagree there, and it's actually something that I brought up on my Miro board about inconsistency and hearsay, because that description is literally written as hearsay, and I'm really surprised that Yoshimitsu also didn't include the Japanese text here. It almost feels like it's cherry picked. I don't want to cast too many aspersions here, but pretty much everything else does. So it just kind of stands out to me that it doesn't here. So let me pull up the text. Let's go to the DS3 section. So Leonhard, no, that's Bloodborne. Leonhard should be right here. So the final 3 characters, Toyu, shows that it said that he inherited it. So he journeyed in pursuit of rebirth, but when he decided to act as the goddess's knight, it said he inherited the Crescent Moon Blade, or Moon Sword. So, right. Let's go back to the video.
And the Crescent Moon Sword also requires Titanite Scale to upgrade. Titanite Scale reads, "Titanite altered by a soul. Reinforces soul transposed weapons to +4. Weapons forged by a soul transposition can only be reinforced by Titanite of the same kind." Based off of this, the Crescent Moon Sword is a soul transposed weapon. So why would Rosaria have a transposed weapon like the Crescent Moon Sword to inherit Leonhard? The answer, I believe, is because the Crescent Moon Sword was transposed from Rosaria's soul when Leonhard inherited the weapon from her.
You know, I could respect that interpretation of things there, because I was initially very against the idea that Leonhard actually truly inherited the weapon from her, but I feel like that also raises the question of, if her soul was transposed once already, then how is she still around? Does that explain why her soul is all goopy looking? And is that why she only has bountiful sunlight? But I digress.
The soul of Rosaria, compared with other souls, is all twisted, warped, and shows signs of possible tampering. When fighting Leonhard for Rosaria's soul, he states, "What do you want with her soul? Isn't flesh enough for a sick beast?" And when you defeat Leonhard, you are able to recover Rosaria's soul. Rosaria's soul reads, "The soul of Rosaria, mother of rebirth, stolen by Ringfinger Leonhard. Return this to her extant corpse, and Mother Rosaria will spring back to life as if nothing had ever happened." What I take from this is that Rosaria's body is a corpse, and her soul is what brings life to her body. I believe Rosaria is a maiden, experimented upon by Seath. She's likely a corpse that has been infused with one of Seath's experimental maidens that has been infused with moonlight. And I believe Rosaria was presented to Gwyn as a daughter of Seath. Well, thanks for watching everyone. Please let me know what you think regarding my thoughts for Seath in the comments.
Fudge, when did I mute myself? Thank you guys. Sorry, I was all in the zone there talking about it. Okay. I guess I'm going to start from the top because I don't know what I didn't say when I paused. Okay, so I must have hit spacebar again. I should know better. Okay, so I'm just going to assume that I didn't say anything for you guys. So yeah, I have a lot of disagreements, and I think Yoshimitsu's final comments here about the daughter of Seath potentially being Rosaria actually raises more questions than it answers, unfortunately. You just thought the video left me speechless? Fair. In that if Rosaria is Seath's daughter, it raises questions of where does Priscilla and Gwendolyn fit in relation to Seath, where does really Gwendolyn fit in relation to Priscilla and Seath? And so the thing that I did was I went over and pulled up the Life Hunt Scythe description. Let me just maximize this. So in Dark Souls 3, when you get Life Hunt Scythe, you get it from the soul of Aldrich and you transpose it with the transposing kiln, blah, blah, blah. And it says, Miracle of Aldrich, Devourer of the Gods, steals HP of foes using an illusory scythe. Aldrich dreamt as he slowly devoured the god of the Dark Moon. In this dream, he perceived the form of a young, pale girl in hiding. So, pale girl here comes from this in Japanese. So, if Priscilla is the pure white half-dragon, then could this white girl or maiden, could this white maiden be the thing that Aldrich was seeing? If so, that would make a lot of sense that we have Life Hunt Scythe to go along with that. And so what does that mean that if Aldrich was eating Gwendolyn, that he beheld a pale girl associated with Life Hunt Scythe? I think that could show that there's meant to be an implicit connection between Gwendolyn and Priscilla, and whether that connection comes from like the Dark Moon affiliation and needing the ears and like serving Velka could be one way to describe it, or it could potentially be a kind of maternal relationship, because if Gwendolyn is not the child of Priscilla, and if Priscilla is not the child of Seath, we need to think about ways of trying to connect him with that idea of lunar magic, which is related to Seath. So obviously in Yoshimitsu's video, he talks about Rosaria's connections to the moon, but they seem kind of small in comparison to what I think you kind of get with the Priscilla connection, which is a lot more direct between Gwendolyn and Priscilla. So let me see if you guys said anything else. Not a single Velka take, you're disappointed. Here's the Velka take, I just mentioned it. Okay. So right. If Rosaria is the wife of Gwyn created by Seath, then does that mean Gwendolyn and potentially the other children are the daughters or the children of Gwyn and Rosaria? Because if Rosaria predates Guinevere, or like is the mother of Guinevere, it's a little bit weird that she's given, her soul has a miracle of servants of Guinevere. That just seems to be slightly contradictory to me. It isn't completely incompatible, but I think it's kind of worth mentioning that it just doesn't work as well as I think it could. The other thing is, let me think, because there's a lot to talk about with that. Oh, right. If Alvina is Priscilla's mother, then who is Priscilla's father? Does that mean Alvina had a relationship with Gwyn? And if so, what does that really imply in terms of that kind of royal family tree? Does Priscilla have any children? Is that child Yorshka? It would seem so. Like there's a lot of more similarities between Yorshka and Priscilla than Yorshka and Rosaria by any stretch of the imagination. So it just seems way more likely to me that Priscilla should have that kind of direct connection to Gwyn. And then The other thing that I did want to mention is when we do go to face Seath, there is a bunch of like invisible crystals that we have to traverse. And so invisibility is kind of part of Seath's magic as well. When Priscilla goes invisible, it is kind of like how Gwendolyn can vanish and reappear later. But obviously, like, Gwendolyn is a bit more like of an illusion than like him kind of going truly invisible. So that much is arguable as well. The other thing that's worth considering is with Priscilla being a half dragon, she has Life Hunt Scythe because she's like the antithesis of life. And Priscilla doesn't drop a soul, if I remember correctly, whereas Rosaria does have a soul. And at least in Dark Souls 1, dragons didn't have souls. So maybe you can make the argument the reason that Rosaria would have a soul is because she is half god or something like that. No, Rosaria isn't related to the gods. So yeah, wait, who's Rosaria's mother? Did he say? Did he have a theory about that?
In her soul is what brings life. Moon sword to inherit a Leon by a soul of to is Rosaria to serve the sunlight. Bountiful sunlight reads on. And is the covenant Rosaria is in a secret rooters.
Alright, yeah, I don't think he mentions who he thinks Rosaria's parent
from Rosaria's soul.
Who's Rosaria's mother could be.
Body is a mental maidens that has been infused with moonlight. Fused with
So okay, no. I was misremembering. So she is a corpse of Guinevere's maidens. But okay, so Guinevere's maiden became wife of Gwyn, which would mean that Guinevere and potentially Gwendolyn predate Gwyn's wife. So this would be his second wife? Is that what he's saying? I'm trying to think about like the actual implications of that. So Gwyn could have had a first wife with Nameless King and Guinevere definitively being the first two children. And so Filianor is questionable, Gwendolyn is questionable. And Gwendolyn would be the last born. So yeah, I feel like that just kind of raises a lot more questions for me. But again, to be fair, even if Priscilla was the wife of Gwyn, it still doesn't explain like the Nameless King and Guinevere stuff super well either. They could have had a different mother. So that's kind of a similar issue between these two theories, I suppose. Yeah, so half dragon, half human, because she's a maiden of Guinevere? I don't know. How do you guys feel about some of those thoughts that I've just been mentioning there? I feel like there's more that I need to talk about, but I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm starting to get to that circular point where I'm just not getting to what I want to say, and I'm just kind of repeating things over and over. Osiris's wife is implied to be Guinevere. She disappeared. So, not exactly, but yeah. She disappeared, and now Rosaria has powers related to fertility and birth. You get that's not strong of a theory. You're still stuck on the cats or dragons? Yeah, I think that by far is the greatest stretch, just because they live long and they can kind of disappear, which I did think the visual assets for Alvina's disappearance is quite different from, what's-her-face, from Priscilla. Let the video play and see what the thoughts bring up. That's not a bad idea.
Titanite scale reads, and Rosaria's soul, who is Seath's daughter, is Rosaria, mother of rebirth. Rosaria is in a secret room within the Cathedral of the Deep. Their soul can be after he chose. The crescent with her soul, a ring finger, is that Rosaria's body is a corpse, and her soul is what brings life to her body. I believe Rosaria is a maiden, experimented upon by Seath. She's likely a...
So yeah, it just makes a lot more sense to me that if Priscilla was Gwyn's wife, that she could have been imprisoned in the painting, and that's why there could have been so many guards appointed over it, because it was a royal decree. Because if she doesn't have that kind of direct connection to the royal family, it just seems a little bit more awkward for me in trying to explain how it all fits together. Which isn't to say that it couldn't fit together, but there's an awful lot of resources that have gone into defending the painted world from like invaders, which is kind of strange. But I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense if you want to like talk about like the whole Velka connection and potential like rebellion against the gods, but that is also even stranger when we consider like how Gwendolyn runs like the Dark Moons and stuff, which seem to be Velka adjacent. So anyway, Gwendolyn's lunar connections seem a bit stronger with Seath, so I feel like he would have to make the argument that Rosaria was his mother, and it's a little bit unfortunate we don't see more lunar stuff with Rosaria, or why she would be like lacking the tongues by the times of Dark Souls 3. Seath died so long ago, Rosaria may have well been born after. Yeah, but I mean, I guess he's trying to say like Rosaria is kind of lifeless, and so that's why she like can exist this long even now. The painting guardians are paid in fluffy tail touches. Rosaria could have gotten that miracle a number of ways. Yeah, I agree with that. I do like the idea of Rosaria's soul potentially being transposed to create the Crescent Moon Sword, which I think is a very interesting theory that I hadn't considered before. But I do feel as though the Leonhard issue of him becoming her knight is a bit self-proclaimed. So he could still be like a self-proclaimed knight and got the weapon from her soul. That very well could be fair, though. What of the painting guardians in the Ring City also protecting Filianor, just as the painting of Ariamis? Are there painting guardians in the Ring City? Oh yeah, you mean with the like the Half-Light fight? Are they actually painting guardians? Half-Light guardians. Huh. I never really noticed that. Like, I noticed that they were white. Or is this somebody just wearing this? Half-Light fights. Huh. Maybe. Okay. Thanks for pointing that out. You don't know, it feels weird. On one hand, Gwendolyn has some ties to Seath with serpentine legs and lunar magic. You like the idea of Seath's daughter giving birth to him. So, yeah, I mean, that much I think could still stand. I just don't think Rosaria works as well, just because Gwendolyn has more connections to Priscilla between the whole, like, Life Hunt Scythe and Aldrich's Soul, and, what's it called? Potentially with Yorshka as well, because Yorshka looks a lot like Priscilla. Although I guess she doesn't really have the fur, but anyway. Yorshka is canonically like Gwendolyn's younger sister. So the way that I looked at it is that Yorshka could potentially be... Sorry, Gwendolyn could still be Gwyn's lastborn, and then Yorshka could have Priscilla as a mother and somebody else as the father. Potentially like Xanthus King Jeremiah. It's the same NPC every time you're offline, so it seems intentional. Yeah. You spent way too much time theorizing about Allfather Lloyd and Velka. You see them everywhere now. Did you know the Glowmide Queen is Velka? On the other hand, oh, okay, so the Rosaria bit doesn't feel right. Okay. Yeah. At the very least, this video is very thought-provoking. I definitely have my fair share of disagreements here, but most of the information is good. I'm going to give it a like. If you guys liked it, I'm going to share it with you in the chat here. So go ahead and give him a like if you enjoyed and a sub. All right. So that'll be it for tonight. I'm going to have to muse on this stuff even more. My thoughts are definitely scattered now, but it's part of the fun of sifting through some of these more outlandish theories. So for all we know, he could be right. It just doesn't pass the vibe check for me on multiple levels. But nonetheless, I still had fun watching it. Yeah. Okay. So that'll be it from me for tonight. We will be going live again tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I was thinking of potentially looking at a Demon Souls video that like summarizes everything or something else. So more to look forward tomorrow. More to look forward to tomorrow. Till then, you all stay safe. Hopefully we'll see you again next time. Last Protagonist out.